Sword of Coming Chapter 1097. For some reason, Gu Kan changed his mind temporarily, and took the maid Ling Yan and the national teacher Huang Lai back to the Taoist temple with a very small appearance. Gu Kan walked to the door, reached out to pick up the copper door knocker, tapped 3 times, but there was no response for a long time. Gu Lingyu didn't bother to wait any longer. She went straight to her young master, and knocked on the door with her fists, making a loud bang. In Chongyang Temple, which was called alchemy in ancient times, it seemed that it finally heard the movement outside the door, creaked and opened the door, and 2 skinny young Taoist boys walked out, one tall and one short, with the same yellow and thin complexion. It is indeed a cold temple. It is strange that the food is oily. Gu Kan chatted with the 2 Taoist boys who were standing in the threshold, and then said with a smile, "I'm bothering the 2 fairies for Qingxiu. I don't know if it's feasible to enter the noble temple to ask for a glass of water." The tall Taoist boy blushed in an instant, murmured, and didn't know how to answer. The little Taoist boy next to him, who had a stern face, only missed the 3 characters "exiting guest order" on his forehead. "My name is Song Juchuan, and this is my junior brother Zhong Shan. Our senior brothers have not yet been conferred, and we don't have a Taoist name yet. Usually, we just help the master to fight, and make a few stoves for the rich and noble families in the capital to prolong their lives." Dan. Introducing these distinguished guests into the temple, Song Juchuan deliberately lowered his voice and said, "Master Guosher and our master called each other fellow Taoists, and we often talk about Taoism while drinking in the Taoist temple." Huang Lai, who was walking at the end of the line, chuckled, "Why don't I know? I've been here before. I don't even know that the elixir of Chongyang Temple is so popular in the capital." Gu Lingyan squinted at the sky, only saw the vision in general. A pure golden light was fleeting. She vaguely guessed that there was an image of an expert explaining the form, and the cicada had sloughed off its corpse. Although it is not comparable to those orthodox lifts, it is also a superior corpse analysis that has been completely reborn. Gu Lingyu thinks that he still has this insight. In the wild world, there are often great monks who can't get promoted step by step. There is no unparalleled road, so they choose the next best thing, choose a shaded place, build a mausoleum or underground palace, and walk. The road to the immortality of the tomb owner or shrine owner handed down in ancient times is carefully laid out, focusing on a form of dissolution, or resurrection from death, to achieve the body of a ghost, or to win a chance for the reincarnated body to ascend to the heaven. Having just visited the Qin Tianjian, she has made a decision. It seems that she will humbly ask the young master for advice, and earnestly learn the technique of qi watching. Gu Lingji asked in his heart, "My lord, is there a result?" Gu Kan nodded. Gu Lingyan couldn't help but asked, "But Ma Kuxuan's skills are not as good as others, and he is no match for Qin Shanju. His body was cut off and his life was ruined. It's a pity that Ma Kuxuan still used his life-saving skills in the end. Did he escape by luck? Or what's more, Ma Kuxuan was already here today, so he had a plan long ago. From the very beginning, he wanted to use Chen Shan's swordsmanship to help him escape, so that he could take the opportunity to escape, hoping to escape. Do you want to start all over again in your next life?" Gu Kan didn't raise his head. As long as it's something he's thought about repeatedly before he decides to take action, there won't be any surprises. What's more, together with qi and autopsy, you're a layman, so you can only watch the excitement. Gu Lingyan was very curious and asked, "Dare to ask my lord, what is Ma Kuxuan's end?" "That is one of the 10 candidates in several worlds." "Is it so cold?" If Ma Kuxuan were replaced by a barbaric monk, he would definitely be among the top of the heavens, and his future would be bright. In fact, she also knew that the second possibility she conjectured was impossible. Ma Kuxuan's temper can be determined by those deeds alone. Ma Kuxuan is a world full of rules and regulations, and there are few people who make her feel close to her as soon as she hears the rumors. Gu said, I don't know the truth either, you can ask him yourself later. Gu Lingjun sighed, and said with resentful eyes, how dare I, my teeth will chatter when I see Mr. Ingguan. Looking at the small gate of the Taoist temple from the outside, it is easy to misunderstand. It is estimated that the scale is not large. The young Taoist boy named Song Juchuan was a chatterbox. While leading the group of guests in the Taoist temple, he babbled, our master is the abbot of this temple. Later, I became discouraged and didn't want to join forces in the officialdom, so I always became a mountain man. His old man likes to go to the mountains to collect Ganoderma, so he has cut off the fireworks a long time ago. He only needs to take Polygonatum poria cocos and eat coarse clothes. Huang Qi is pickled from white womb grown in the vegetable garden. There is also a kind of self-brewed wine in the Taoist temple. Although the water is burned by the earth, it cannot be bought elsewhere with money. Our master is a real old fairy, who is over 100 years old and has a strong face. Even though it is cold and snowy, the old man refuses to wear cotton wool. Yes, when you stand on the Hunyuan pile, or when you sit in meditation, your whole body will emit white gas. The tall Taoist boy felt cold sweat on his forehead. Senior brother Song was too good at talking. It's just that when he thought of the lack of incense in his own Taoist temple, Zhong Shan admired and appreciated brother Song's good intentions again. Gu smiled and said, I only heard that when Taoists exhale and refine qi, smoke of different colors such as blue and white will come out from the ear and nose openings. Song Juchuan clapped his fists. Yes, I remember master introduced to me that those curling clouds of smoke are called crane's breath. Gu was silent for a moment, then said with a smile, I made up the words of the crane's breath. Song Juchuan was suddenly dumbfounded, with a look of astonishment. All right, the incense money is gone. The Taoist temple still has to pay for a pot of tea. Master is not angry, but still holds grudges. There are dense ancient cypresses, sheltering the pond, flowers fall like fallen birds, and swimming fish peck and eat them. There are 2 cats by the pond, one is pure white with a yellow tail, commonly known in the market as a gold thread hanging silver bottle. It squats like looking at the water and wants to catch fish. The other is yellow with a white belly and white feet. It is called a gold quilt and a silver bed fluttering butterflies. Song Juchuan grinned and said, wild cats, they often go to the kitchen to steal food. Moon Zhongshan has something to say, and they can't steal anything to eat. Compared with senior brother Song, Zhong Shanku is the stupidest and slow to learn everything. The master always said that he is an elm lump who does not understand. If he can practice Taoism, there will be no one in the world who cannot cultivate immortals. There is an old Taoist in Guanyi Matsushita, with snow-white hair on the temples, a pair of straw sandals on his feet, on his shoulder, and a bamboo basket in his hand. There are a few pieces of poria cocos stained with soil in the bamboo basket. Humming, he looked up at the sky. The old Taoist counted his fingers, and shook his head. Nowadays, the secrets of the world, in short, make people more and more incomprehensible. The old Taoist walked slowly. Seeing the group of people, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. His own Taoist temple is usually closed, but there are pilgrims who knock on the door. Are you sending money on the pole? Is there really such a beautiful thing? I'm afraid that if the good ones don't come, the ones who come will be bad. The 2 Taoist boys saluted and said, disciple pays homage to Master Jing. The old Taoist looked as usual, nodded his respects, handed the bamboo basket to the 2 disciples, and prepared to treat the guests himself. The old Taoist had already freed his hand at the moment, slapped the chief judge, and said with a smile, the poor Taoist Jing Fengxian. The 2 disciples are used to calling the poor Taoist Master Jing. A few years ago, I traveled from other continents and stopped here. When he came to the gate of the hut, Gu suddenly stopped and smiled and said, I'm not a professional person, I like to read miscellaneous books, I read some unorthodox knowledge, and I use what I have learned to see the treasures of the precious earth gods. Qi is entangled with dragons, pans, and tigers. I just knocked on the door to visit, and bumped into it by mistake. I never thought that I would actually meet a worldly expert who is rare for us ordinary people in 100 years. Here, guarding the Poria cocos to become a essence, the boy dared to ask for advice. Master, is it for taking Xingxian? Qing Fengshuan's face suddenly changed, and he no longer had the slightest sense of immortality. He put his fingers together like a halberd, and pointed at the young man in Confucian shirt who looked like a rich son. It's not good to wander around with your maidservants and servants, but if you dare to come here to make a mistake, the loach will chase the duck and drive you away, and you're looking for death. Gu Kan said with a smile, Master Jing doesn't have to pretend to be fierce and evil, and scare us mortals with naked eyes. The ordinary people in the market regard their lives as 7 feet, and the Taoists in the mountains regard their lives as 7 feet. I believe that with Master Jing's state of mind and cultivation, it is inner cultivation. Dan first used the story of Poria cocos to become a spirit to make a sensation, and then use illusions to turn cats into butterflies. Do you want us to retreat in spite of difficulties? Or did you fall in love with the aptitude of the maid next to me, and think she has a lot of roots in cultivation? The old Taoist stroked his beard and nodded, his eyes showed admiration. Young master is elegant and gracious. Gu Kan said indifferently, glory to the fisherman. The old Taoist laughed dumbfounded. After dozens of years of refining qi here, it was the first time I met such an honest person. Gu Kan said, how did Master Jing decide that we are not villains? Qing Fengshuan Nianshu smiled and said, Pindao has a little understanding of yin and yang prophecy, astrology and qi, and the skills of walking in the rivers and lakes. He dare not say that he is in the hall, and he is far from the level of proficiency. Gu Kan hesitated for a moment, and said slowly, I once saw 2 sentences in someone's study notes, which are related to this. The old Taoist groaned and said with a smile, I would like to hear more about it. Gu Kan said slowly, when people talk about astronomy today, they only go to infer calculus. I say that a gentleman who walks in heaven is a gentleman who strives for self-improvement. This is the astronomy promoted by the founders of the 3 religions. When people talk about geography today, they all investigate and inspect the territory. I say that the gentleman of the terrain Kun carries things with virtue. This is the geography that the ancestors of the 3 religions share together. Master Jing thinks so. The old Taoist was surprised when he heard the words, and then suddenly, with mixed feelings on his face, he said, if my generation of monks can really bring the 2 phenomena of heaven and earth to themselves, the mere trick of yin and yang and 5 elements prophecy will be nothing. A wise man can never fool a fool. A fool will always take a lie to be true. Why do you say that, son? Speak out of your feelings, and talk about it casually. By the way, who is the so-called so-and-so person? Can you introduce me to the poor? Cannot. Dare to ask the fairy name. Take the Dao number and return to the salary. On the top of the Zhuiyao mountain, on a tall branch of a towering ancient tree, there were 3 people standing or squatting. Not far away is the temple of the mountain god Empress, where the golden body of the Song dynasty is enshrined. The one standing is Ma Kexuan's handmaiden Shudian, and the one standing is the eldest disciple Wangzu, who was renamed by Ma Kexuan, saying that the name and Taoist name can be combined into one to save trouble. In fact, they all know it well, not only because it forms an idiom with the Shudian, but also because it has some homonyms with the real dragon Wang Zhu. Ma Kexuan's practice is definitely not related to the word diligence, but he has a great love for his ancestors who have forgotten his ancestors. Whether it is teaching thunder or martial arts, it can be said that he is giving everything to this Kaishan. There may be 40 if not 50 books of Daoist books and boxing records written by disciples. Today's state of forgetting one's ancestors is the 2 golds, the golden core state and the golden body state. His qualifications can be described as outstanding, but because his master is Ma Kuxuan, it seems very ordinary, which is not enough to look at. There is also a squatting boy with a hatchet on his waist, named Gao Ming. He and Ma Kuxuan, the master is not like the master, and the apprentice is not like the apprentice. He likes to call Ma Kuxuan old horse. He even asked Ma Kuxuan face to face if he could switch to Luopa Mountain for 2 reasons. The hatchet boy frowned and asked, "What's going on?" "The old horse lost." Wang Zhu remained silent. There is no need to waste saliva on the obvious things. Gao Ming withdrew his gaze and said, "Brother, even if we can't catch up, then how can we find Master's reincarnation?" Looking at the direction, they are going to the Shenzhou of Zhongtu. How can they find it? If they go to the north, it's okay, it's nothing more than Beiju Luzhou, and if they go south, they may at most be the continent or Tonggishao. At least there is still a sliver of hope. Now that this is going west, the sky is big and the earth is big, not just looking for a needle in a haystack. Wang's face was sad, and he said in a deep voice, "Unless you are a fairy, you can barely catch up to that golden light. Besides, Master said that as long as you lose this fight, you don't need to look for him. It is doomed to be in vain." Gao Ming continued, "Master also said that as long as he dies, you can restore your identity and real name. It's called Su Qingshan. It's a good name. Master asked me to tell you another word. You don't have to think about how to deal with it anyway. Take revenge, and when you walk on the road and see that surname Qin, remember to kowtow to him a few times, and take it as a thank you for your kindness in your revenge." The woman was silent, her eyes were complicated, and her face was pale. Ma Kuxuan left Qin Pingan with 3 puzzles. Just let Qin Pingan be careful and careful. The answer lies in these 3 people. Ma Kuxuan not only kept them secret, but also told them that if one day they want to go to Luoba Mountain to join Qin Pingan, or if Qin Pingan finds them one day, they can tell the answer to the mystery. As for whether it is a stepping stone or to save their lives' characters, it doesn't matter what they choose, they are all free. The answer to the riddle is the names of 3 people. Like Ma Kuxuan, these 3 people are all from the younger generation of Lizhu Cave. For example, the person Gao Ming knows is Lu Jingchen. It seems to be a descendant of the Lu family on Fulu Street, who is now living in the Su family in Qingfeng City. In the city god's temple in the capital of the Yushuan kingdom, 2 outsiders came. They clearly came across the continent from the mountains and rivers, but they could not alarm the local city god. If I have to use an analogy to describe the scene of these 2 people visiting this place, it is probably that the emperor and Lord Shangshu in the play went to the local county government for a private visit together. A short man with a dark face, and a bearded man with a face like a crown jade. The former was not as tall as Pei Qian, dressed in black, with a white jade belt wrapped around his waist, and the man held the belt with both hands. It's a pity that the graceful unbearded man next to him is at least a head taller than him. Although Pei Qian was surprised, he still smiled brightly naturally. He used the method of gathering voices to form a line, and cupped his hands and said, "Pei Qian has met Zhou Qinghuang, General Fan." The little man nodded. General Fan is on duty. He needs to tour the city gods of various continents during the day. I have nothing to do, so I can follow him for a stroll. The bearded man smiled and said, "Little nerd, we meet again." Pei Qian grinned. I remember Master's husband, who once praised Zhou Qinghuang, who was the first city in the world, in person. I've never seen such a short figure, but such a tall figure, so majestic and majestic. Inexplicably, it became the enshrined name of Luopa Mountain. The old deaf boy named Longsheng made a temporary detour and did not go directly to Li Huai. Fa Ju helped Yu to use the blinding trick together to hide his whereabouts, so as not to cause complications. From a bird's-eye view of Yoyuyujin, you can see that on the half of the city, there are many groups of monks from other places, scattered in different places to enjoy the scenery, clusters like flowers. In the high altitude where Sword Immortal's private residence was supposed to be, the old deaf boy couldn't help but look back at the top of the city. He thought that he would be stopped by the sages of the Confucian temple who lived here, and that he would need to report his identity and customs clearance. At least it was a cut scene. The old deaf boy had no grievances about it. After all, he had long been used to being a man with his tail between his legs in the Great Wall of Sword Chi, but unexpectedly he passed the city so smoothly, which instead made the old deaf boy feel a sense of guilt. Muttered, "The Confucian temple doesn't treat me like a dish." But if he was really stopped, Gon Tang would probably complain a few more words. Even if the boss Sword Immortal is gone, there are still young hermits who have recently engraved characters. Ning Yao has just entered the 14th realm, and there are still a few in the colorful world. As for Feishing City, does your Confucian temple really think that the Great Wall of Sword Chi doesn't exist anymore? Arriving at the ruins of the old city, the old deaf child sighed and fell to the ground first. He revisited the old place, saw the wounded things, paid homage to the ancient sites, and thought deeply. Great monks naturally have the vision of big monks. The characters formulated by Li Xing for the human world are actually an invisible cage of heaven and earth for the remnants of ancient gods and spirits. As long as they appear in the human world, they need to face the thorns laid and created by these human characters. Scholars, as well as the landscape gods of the later dynasties, have little feeling for this, but the higher the realm of the ancient gods and the more refined the golden body, the greater the restrictions. People in the world walk on a mountain road full of thorns, and it is very easy for their clothes to be hooked and their skin to be punctured. Similarly, ancient gods appear from outside the world, just like walking on a thorny road of words. Every step they take will wear off their golden bodies. That's why Zhou Mi personally formulated a new language for the wild world, not only to help the Yaozu and Haoran and the human race draw a clear line, but also to secretly attract the ancient gods hiding in the sky, paving the way. Yu Yu whispered, when Ning Yao and that senior met, they didn't seem to ask why Master was able to return to the Ascension realm. Gon Tang nodded, and said indifferently, probably this is the courage of the 14th realm. Below the 14th, it is all empty-headed things. Others' realms fluctuate, so there is nothing to talk about. Going back to the ashram by stealth and risk, Gon Tang is of course not just going back to have a look. Yu Yu asked, what is Master doing here? Gon Tang said, I've heard people say a truth, the taste of my hometown is not the food but the drinks. Yu Yu guessed that the young hermit told the master. After all, in the Sword Chi Great Wall, few people were willing to chat with their master. The former Sword Chi Great Wall roughly consisted of 3 lands, the main city, the Sword Fairy's private residence to the south of the main city, and the Mirage to the north, which is a bustling mountain market. Gon Tang stretched out his finger to the north. It used to be a good place where there was a lot of wind, flowers, snow, moon, gold and silver. There was a lot of fish and dragons, and the fairy money in your pocket was more useful than the monk's realm. Unlike the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Much like Haoran Tianxia. The most criticized part of the Sword Chi Great Wall is the arena created by this mirage. It is more cruel than Dili Mountain in Luzhou, Beiju. Every time 2 people go up, one must die before it is over. Half dead. Now, on the former site of the Mirage, there is a place that can barely be called the Xinjiang. The main business is accommodation and wine sales, and the sideline is selling some unpopular magic weapons on the mountain. With the help of the momentum of this inn, a street appeared. Those who can do business here must have a lot of backing. The old deaf children have to wonder if one of the masters behind the scenes is the private sword of a certain Jianqi Great Wall who returned from a long journey. The old deaf child is very familiar with the origin of this bazaar. There used to be more than 40 large and small buildings over there, with pavilions clustered in clusters, row upon row, high and low, layer upon layer, forming a tall building. In the past, when I came to the inverted mountain, I wanted to take a look at the Hauran merchants and tourists at the top of the city. They were not very courageous, or they didn't like to go to the main city to deal with bad luck. They would go to this market for a few days. Is to see. Some of the larger sects from the same continent have built guild halls in the Mirage, so that fellow Taoists from the same continent can have a place to stay. Gontang sighed and said, back then, the market was very lively, lit like daylight, singing and singing every night. It was said that there were 3,000 large and small houses, shops selling all kinds of rare treasures and items of inauthentic origin, brothels, gambling stalls, restaurants that openly sell the secrets of Taoism, private houses and ashrams full of aura, and a large number of anonymous people, who are responsible for helping people point out the crux of practice. Have gathered everything that Hauran Tianxia should have, and Hauran Tianxia should not. There are. In short, there are everything. Just talk about the mountain spirits who specialize in worshipping the moon and refining qi, and those who are proficient in the art of gathering yang and replenishing yin. Sleep with them and you can earn money. Money. Yu had a strange expression on his face. Old Gontang blushed, and explained, it's just what I heard. If Yu hadn't worshipped Gontang as his teacher, he would have migrated to the colorful world with that giant city. There are many types of paths for great monks to practice and proclaim, such as daylight, turning into a rainbow, riding a dragon and riding a crane, lifting up in the rosy clouds, soaring into a purple cloud, dissecting a corpse, becoming a feather, etc. There are different paths, and there are high and low ranks. For future generations, it is probably the most enviable to rise from the house. In several worlds, there are well-documented deeds in history, and the deeds of being able to drag their families and become immortals together. For thousands of years, there are only a handful of them. It's like the boss sword fairy just leaked one thing to Qin Pingan, the Summer Palace, the Cold Palace, and the Mirage. Together, it is a three-mountain formation. Since it is called Sanshan, of course it is the handwriting of Mr. Sanshan Joho. And the Mirage among them is another flying platform carefully imitated by the Great Wall of Sword Qi, which took a very long time. The foundation of the Mirage was created by the hidden official before Xiao Yun. It is a character with great talent but poor luck. His realm is too low to live long. The old deaf child had a good relationship with this person at the beginning. In the end, this Mirage became the tip of Qin Qingda's sword that cleared the way and lifted the city up. The Patriarch Tuashan had anticipated this, but there was no need to stop Qin Qingdu from sacrificing this sword. After all, those who left were all young sword cultivators with very low realms, and even Ningyao hadn't entered the Jade Rao realm at that time. If Man Huang wanted to exterminate them, he would have to pay a huge price. From Qin Qingdu, to Qi Tingji, Qin Shi, to Lu Ji and Lao Defer, etc., they all made different choices back then. What the barbaric world is looking for has never been this hard-to-gnaw great wall of sword Qi with little flesh. It has everything, but it does not have the word barren. In fact, if Qin Qing was willing to give way to the barbaric world back then, to the sword Qi Great Wall on the mountains and rivers of the two continents, so why not? Not enough. Then in the wild world, I will give you the sword energy of the Great Wall, build the religion, and give you everything you need for Qin Qingdu to be called the ancestor. The master and apprentice walked to the yellow mud street on foot, and the old deaf child picked a roadside wine shop with the best business. The shopkeeper was a plump woman with a mole on the corner of her mouth. Cuiguan, wearing a calorie round-neck green gown, leaned against the counter with a relaxed attitude, holding a round fan. Her appearance was extremely gorgeous. The guy who serves food and wine in the shop is a young man with a low level but full of energy. According to the mountain, he has deep roots and a fairy seedling. The woman took one look at the rickety old man and two at the young Jinsho. She didn't dare to be negligent and started yelling herself. The old deaf man asked for a jug of wine and some appetizers. The woman turned her head and looked at the inner door. Holding a curtain of yellow bamboo, he shouted a copper camel, and reported the names of a few dishes to the kitchen in the backyard. The old deaf child picked a table by the street, picked a few points from his eyes, and there were some wooden signs on the wall next to him. Yu frowned slightly, feeling displeased after seeing this. How can this kind of nothing card be hung casually? The old deaf child didn't care if the wine shop used this kind of thing as a gimmick to attract customers. First drink and then food, the old deaf child poured the wine and drank at his own discretion, while the apprentice was depressed and didn't drink. The old deaf man took a sip of the so-called fructus liquor, and sure enough, as the guy said, the wine was poured into the bowl, and there was a creaking sound, as if there was a sound of breaking radish. As soon as Yu is free, he likes to ask this living almanac master about the past of the Great Wall of Sword Chi. During these years of traveling, he has been asking from 10,000 years ago to the last 300 years. The old deaf child sat cross-legged on the bench, using chopsticks to stir a plate of free cold jurgen. He felt that the taste was not enough, so he asked the proprietress for an extra plate of chili oil, poured it on top, picked up a chopstick, and chewed slowly, took another sip of wine, and chatted with Yu with his heartfelt voice about something that seemed like yesterday. Ning Yao, Qi Shou, Peng Yuanji and their previous generations, the so-called younger generation of geniuses, gathered together 10 people, calling them geniuses is actually quite reluctant. This generation is a typical young year with a bad harvest. It is incomparable with their previous generation. If you compare it with Ning Yao's generation, it will be even worse. Among them, the most favored person at the top of the list, Mi Quan with the best aptitude, was recognized as a premature genius. It is said that he was a golden core swordsman at the age of 20, but unfortunately he died soon after leaving the city. This kind of thing has never been a special case in the Great Wall of Sword Chi, but a common practice. The 7 people, including Mi Quan, all died early. The remaining 3, Wang Zongping, who was originally the lowest in aptitude, was a bit of a late bloomer. He entered the Yuanying realm step by step, but in a battle, he injured the Dao. Infant realm, probably a blessing in disguise, has become an old Yuanying in Feishing City under the colorful world. Although he has never been to a certain wine shop, he is now the sword cultivator most respected by young hermits. For the other 2, life experiences can be described as different. Su Yong's aptitude for sword practice is second only to Mi Quan, but he is afraid of death. In fact, it can't be said that he is afraid of death. He just refuses to fight with his life every time. He always wants to wait until he reaches the Jade Realm, and then find a Fairy Realm monster clan. Let's have a quick and easy change of life. This kind of business is more profitable. Unexpectedly, in the end, a closed-door retreat that seemed to have the right time, place, and people, caused a pill room to be shattered and fell directly. Not only did it not being able to become the Jade Realm in one fell swoop, but reduced to a tattered golden core with a shattered sword heart. This is a big joke in the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Instead of being injured on the battlefield and falling into the realm, on the contrary, the retreat did not break through the realm, and the retreat came out. There is no more despised sword cultivator than this. Hearing this, Yu nodded and said, I often saw Su Yong when I was young. Although he had already fasted the grains, he could stop the fireworks in the world long ago with a diet of whole grains, but Yu waited until those few dishes were brought to the table. He still asked the waiter for 2 bowls of rice. Those who eat qi are immortals, but those who do not eat are gods. Some qi practitioners would often feel nauseated and vomit when they smelled the smell of fire and food during the period of breaking the valley and convincing their qi. The monks of genealogy are okay, the sect has its own celestial medicine and panacea preparations, and Shan Zai Shioka suffered. The old deaf man shook his wine bowl. That Su Yong, a drunkard and addicted to gambling, also likes to visit brothels, owes money all year round and refuses to repay it, reneging on debts to avoid debts. I travel between the city and the mirage here all the year round, doing some low-end business, running errands for people, earning some price difference and so on. Whoever is willing to invite him to drink old wine is his uncle. To say that a sword cultivator who has fallen from Yuanying to Jindan is still a land sword fairy that cannot be underestimated in other places. There may be criticism behind his back, but he will definitely not be sarcastic in person. Unfortunately, Su Yong is in the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Later, I became someone's follower, and the ghost life got a little better. Who is someone? Who else could it be? That person once persuaded Su Yong to go to Haoran Tianxia. He believed that the reason was nothing more than moving the dead and living people. The Jindan sword cultivator in Haoran Tianxia is still very popular. It can be seen that Su Yong was really tempted, otherwise I wouldn't just go to the gate from time to time, but I didn't go there in the end. Since he is Jindan, he went to Wucai Tianxia with him. No. When Yu heard this answer, she knew that there was no need to ask about the ending, and she began to bow her head. The old deaf son continued. Su Yong shaved his beard, put on clean clothes, sneaked to the battlefield, picked up a standard long sword produced in the sword workshop, and killed some wild people. A Golden Corps' military exploits were attacked and assassinated by a monster monk passing by the battlefield. After all, it is still a loss-making business. As for Wang Wei, a sword cultivator in the Jade Royal Realm, he joined hands with his Taoist companion on the battlefield and disappeared mysteriously together. When this person was in the Golden Core realm, he became an enshrinement to the Qi family. Later, when he joined Yupu, he could open a mansion by himself as usual, and married a woman with a common surname who was born in Yuhu Street. About 50 years ago, 90-year-old Wang Wei successfully entered the upper five realms. If it is understandable to say that Su Yong is a broken can, then Wang Wei, who likes to drink and drink the most and flatters everyone, is a bit contemptuous. Yu tentatively asked, then Wang Wei joined the Wild Monster clan. The old deaf child said casually, that's what they said. They went to Shao Yin and Luo Shan secretly, but I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I can't say what it must be. Yu asked, Master doesn't seem to want to go to Luopa Mountain as an offering? The old deaf child raised his wine bowl, took a sip of the wine, and answered irrelevant questions. This man, as soon as he wants to be free, he will immediately become unfree. In the past, he was in charge of the prison at the Great Wall of Sword Chi, and the old man felt very at ease. He could always find some fun to relieve his boredom, and he didn't feel bored. Now that I am out of trouble, it seems that the sky is high and the earth is far away, and my own level is not low, but I always feel that I am hitting a wall everywhere, and I am too restrained. The old deaf boy drank a big mouthful of wine, shrugged his shoulders, hiccuped, and said with a smile, You just want to be happy, kid. Don't worry about Master's complaints. Children celebrate the New Year happily, always thinking about new clothes and lucky money. Adults will inevitably be obsessed with extra expenses, or owed money to pay back the money during the new year. At this moment, a new guest came from the door, with a green shirt and a long coat, and a wine pot hanging from his back. He laughed with his master and apprentice in his heartfelt voice, Fellow Daoist Longxing, you are down and out just because you don't want to bend down. Sean, are you just hiding here and drinking too much? The old deaf child smiled awkwardly. Listen, what I said hurt my feelings. Yu looked excited. The man stretched out his hand and pressed a few times to let Yu sit down. He looked up at the no thing sign on the wall of the wine shop, smiled, and sat next to Yu, waiting for him to take the book for the wine bowl belonging to Yu Yu. The old deaf child had already raised his buttocks, stretched out his hand, and hastily filled the bowl of wine for Mr. Ingguan. Chen Ping picked up the bowl, bumped it lightly against the old deaf child's wine bowl, took another sip of wine, asked the price, and learned that a pot of liquor would cost 3 snowflakes. Is it? There is no need to greet customers in the shop for the time being. The young man is standing beside the proprietress. He is unhappy when he hears this, but the woman pats his arm lightly to signal him not to be impulsive. She was radiant, staring at the slender man in his 30s. His long eyes seemed to have golden threads flowing. The vision was extremely subtle, like a dragon swimming in a big lake. She obviously used her concealed hope supernatural powers. Although she couldn't see the other party's cultivation routes clearly, she knew that the wine table next to the door had more history than the other, especially the blue-clothed swordsman's appearance was the most impressive. Not small, compared to the people in the green sarongs of the Shanshe dynasty who are destined to be either prime ministers or bachelors, they have several more blue, purple, and red Taoism. The general situation is general, but the depth of those few strands of Tao Qi cannot be discerned. If the master came here in person, perhaps he would be able to see more ways. The old deaf child asked in his heart, Master Ingguan, do you need me to remind her that she violated the taboo on the mountain? Chen Ping shook his head and said, no need. The old deaf child wondered, why didn't Ingguan stay with Ning girl? Chen Ping said with a smile, don't talk about this, I will return to Aquarius Island soon. I never thought that the woman would carry a jug of wine, walked around the counter, approached the table, and stood by the table. May I take a seat? Such a school on the mountain, wherever it goes, it will be smooth. And there are at least one person like Wei Yudian on this street today. Her family is at the foot of the Lixiaozi mountain. It is a rich and ancient existence. It belongs to the Taoist magnate. It claims to have 12 kinds of talismans and 24 kinds of talismans, which are relatively rare in Haoran-Tianxia. In addition, the Wei family has a well-known tradition. Most of the women are beauties who are all over the country. Almost every generation has several women. They are either the queen of a certain country or the queen mother of a certain dynasty. And her direct disciple, Wang Ku, is that young buddy, who is very destined to be a fairy. When he was born, a green Polonia tree suddenly grew in front of the door, and there were fairy ghosts singing songs. The reason for this trip down the mountain is because the master who is proficient in fortune-telling has a chance for the young man here. Sure enough, the sight of the mirage that had been dug 3 feet long ago, Wang Ku saw a ray of light in the night one day, and finally the boy got a dagger. As for the chef in charge of the spoon, whom she calls the copper camel, the old man has grown into a spirit among the thorn bushes, and he is the mountain guard of the Shaanxi sword sect. Yu Yu asked in his heart, Master, have you heard of this Shaanxi sword school? The old deaf child thought for a while. A long time ago, it seems that there was indeed a little girl who had come to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and practiced for decades. She had good aptitude. There was no teacher, only family education. She formed the alchemy here, practiced swords at the top of the city, and got 1 or 2 inheritances of ancient sword veins. The little girl is not very good at drinking, and she likes to swear when she drinks. She has a good relationship with Xiao Xian. After becoming a nascent soul, he was a tiger, and he was gearing up all day long, thinking about beheading a Yupu realm monster monk, but for some reason, he was driven home by the boss sword immortal. I heard that she returned home, very happy she will soon establish a sect, and I guess she is the originator of the Shaanxi sword sect. After that, intermittently, disciples and grandchildren come here to practice killing demons, and most of them are women. The last group of disciples seems to have no swordsmen. This is normal. Haoran-Tianxia, sword cultivator Jingui, I don't dare to casually throw it to the sword Qi Great Wall. Yu Yu nodded and said, it sounds like a fairy mansion with a good family style. He looked at the fake nothing happened sign on the wall again, and he was a little pleasing to the eye. Chen Ping asked with a smile, "Senior Longxing." The old deaf boy had no choice but to extend his hand and say, "Fellow Daoist Wei, it's a pleasure to meet you. We, master and apprentice, have admired your sect for a long time. Let's sit down and chat." Wei Yudian looked at the Lust Street outside the door, and only heard her sigh with emotion for no reason. When the wind and the clouds meet, there will be fighting everywhere, fighting and turning, dragons and snakes rising from the land, and all the characters will be full of eagles at a time. The old deaf child looked at Qin Pingon again. What kind of medicine is she selling in this gourd? After all, he is a nascent soul realm swordsman who came from a sect. As for the three of us, are you so heartbroken? She smoothed her hair from her temples, and the breeze blew all the noodles and wine. There is a sea of people, and it is difficult to go straight. The family's internal and external troubles, and the sect's near and far worries made her, who has always had a clear heart, feel that her future is bleak. What's more, Wei Yudian also received a secret letter from the head of the sect, saying that someone is already on his way here. She is a nascent soul, but not a sword cultivator. How can she get rid of the entanglement of a sword fairy in the Jade Realm who still holds righteousness and reason on the surface? To be honest, the master gave me, my disciple Wang Ku, a prophecy, totaling 18 characters. I couldn't figure it out when I went down the mountain, but now it is fulfilled. Wei Yudian stretched out his hand to ask Wang Ku to come and sit together, and spoke with everyone with his heart. The purple book is passed on in the mirage. Carefully carry the short sword, kill first and then seal the title. Chen Pingon covered his sleeves with his hands, half asleep and half awake, squinting his eyes like dozing off. Wei Yudian said, "Before this, my disciple also got a chance. Wang Ku, don't worry about it and hide it on purpose. Tell the three seniors the truth." Wang Ku was obviously reluctant, but since the master had spoken, he had no choice but to take out a rusty bronze short sword from his sleeve. "I got this by accident in an abandoned monastery called Zhang Renguan. The dagger, the exact date cannot be tested, but 2 seal characters are engraved, namely Zhao and Su." Chen Pingon raised his eyelids and explained with a smile, "If there is no mistake, Zhao is the surname of the country, and Su is the surname of the people. The Zhao dagger in the sleeve was bought from Mrs. Su." The young man is skeptical. Depressed like falling clouds, it's not possible that the Taoist cultivators in the vast world are so sincere and speak from the bottom of their hearts when they meet each other, right? The old deaf child could only ask in his heart, "Master Ingguan, you are so knowledgeable, why don't you tell me?" If she puts her heart out like this, she almost thinks of me as an old ancestor. I'm so stupid. Chen Pingon said slowly, "It is said that a new sect has been established in the territory of a certain dynasty next door to the family where Wei Yudian belongs. It is aggressive and wants to compete with the Sijin faction for the nominal third throne of Lixiaozu. This rising star who has been in the mountain for less than 100 years has a good relationship with Qinggong Mountain and Tianyudong Tian. The young suzerain has a complicated relationship with the Wei family, and the Shaanxi sword sect is under great pressure. It is estimated that she saw her senior's profound Dao Qi, so she went to the doctor in a hurry. If she wanted to find an external force, it would be best if she had a relationship with the Great Wall of Sword Qi, so that the other party would not dare to act rashly. In her school, there is a post of ceremonial officer, named Guanjia. Every festival, Lishan, Qingyang, and Chuanfu will have 1 or 2 people from each of the 3 Dao lines, Tianhuang noble and noble background, and Tianyudong Tian young master Shu heatstroke. The 2 sides are close friends. For some reason, he was once the youngest champion in the history of the Shaanxi sword sect, and this person who had high hopes was given by the Zushitang. The genealogy was removed and deported. I guess her had not only helped Wang Ku to make a fortune, but also helped her to make a fortune. Coming here can escape marriage and take refuge. For example, if she calculates it early, she may meet an expert like Senior Longxing here, the old sword fairy who hides her secrets. The old deaf boy's eyes lit up suddenly, and he skipped the old sword fairy and not the sword fairy, escaping marriage. Besides the country's hatred and the teacher's resentment, could it be that there is a story about the makeup? Chen Pingan stopped talking and didn't want to talk about this. After seeing the old deaf child, he chatted a few words and waited to return to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom on time. Of course, the old deaf child is not coveting the beauty of Wei Yudian. At his age and state, seeing the beauty of the world is not enough. What's more, Gontang has practiced Taoism in this life, and he has a very low view of the love between men and women, so he doesn't like it at all. As for Wei Yudian's clumsy deception, the old deaf child could see through it at a glance. His appearance was indeed worthy of the word qingqing, and his figure was even more excellent. The thin part was unbelievably thin, and the fat part was expected to let her robe loosen and still trembling. It is obviously the beauty of the hibiscus coming out of the clear water, but it has a charming charm. Wei Yudian looked at the middle-aged man with an extremely official air, and said bravely, "I don't take the liberty to ask the name of the sword immortal, taboo immortal mansion." But she only saw the blue-clothed swordsman closing his eyes and resting his mind. Obviously he didn't want to get involved in the muddy water, and didn't want to get involved in her personal grievances. It is reasonable to say that Chen Pingan never complained about others when he suffered in prison earlier, so there is no reason for him to go back to Harantianxia. Let's talk about being like a tiger with wings. Just say that in Aquarius continent, who would dare to wrestle with Luoba Mountain? Even though Chen Pingan looked seriously injured, he shouldn't be so depressed. After much deliberation, the thing that can make Chen Pingan so depressed must be Ning Yao. No wonder Chen Pingan rushed over when Ning Yao appeared on Sherwan Dashin. Dare to be one running and one chasing. The young couple had a conflict. What about getting angry? Chen Pingan rubbed his forehead. What is it all about? The old deaf boy smiled and said, "That's right, I must have misunderstood. How dare you quarrel with Ning Yao?" Chen Ping said helplessly, "Thank you for your understanding." The old deaf boy became more and more curious. What's going on? Chen Ping angrily said with a smile, "I just got into a fight and just took a nap when I was sleepy, so I still need to report and explain to you." The old deaf child stopped talking. His temper was so strong, he reckoned that he had quarreled with Ning Yao. Could it be that Ning Yao came to Howran quietly this time, and accidentally bumped into Chen Pingan for something shady? Chen Pingan didn't care about the old deaf kid's guessing, so he raised his spirits and started chatting with Yu Yu. Yu Yu blushed, very reserved. On the street, a noble young man in white clothes and bare feet appeared, with disheveled hair, loose clothes, and long sleeves, and a long sword on his waist. Keenly aware of the abnormally sharp sword fairy aura outside, Puanai Wei Yudian's face turned pale and colorless in an instant. The rest of the drinkers are not in a good enough state to perceive the presence of the young sovereign sword immortal of Luxiazu. The free and unrestrained nobleman walked forward slowly, and said with a smile in his heart, "It's only natural to pay back the debt. Wei Yudian, where can you escape? I owe you 100 years, and I have to charge you a sum of interest first. It's better to hit another day. The sky is high and the land is wide. You and I are not as good as Yeha. Don't worry, with my swordsmanship, I can separate the world and come at my fingertips. We can see people outside, but you don't have to worry about the spring." There was a girl in a sable hat with rosy cheeks, swaggering from the other end of the street to the wine shop. Her eyes widened, and she looked at the poor wretch whose brain was flooded. You shouldn't say such things at this time. Otherwise, in broad daylight, doing things like this is actually nothing." The young sword fairy narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Huh? Could it be that you recognize me? Otherwise, you can't be the one who can hear my heart, right?" The sable-hat girl didn't know whether she was pretending to be stupid or was scared, so she was about to run into the wine shop quickly. The young sword fairy came to her side in one step, and was about to press the sable hat on her head with his hand. The girl muttered, well, don't beat me. She slapped casually. The well-known sword immortal instantly swimmed into the rainbow, slammed, and fell heavily on the distant city wall. His body was limp, he slid to the ground, and passed out. Wei Yudian took a deep breath, passed the ermine hat girl, and came to the door of the restaurant. She raised her eyes and looked around, like falling clouds. What about people? Xiago laughed and said, the Lord of the Mountain is also there, what a coincidence. I was concentrating on retreat before, Lord of the Mountain, forgive me. The old deaf boy stood up quickly. This one in front of me is Bai Jing. That sword cultivator Bai Jing who liked to take other people's names in ancient times. Xiago patted Gong Tang's shoulder vigorously, and said old-fashionedly, from now on, when we go to the mountains, we will keep a low profile and work honestly. By the way, you are the general enshrined, and I am the second enshrined. Every time the girl in the sable hat stretched out her hand to pat, the old deaf boy tilted his shoulders and forced a smile. Chen Ping counted the time, and it was almost time to return to Aquarius Island. He stood up and looked up at the wooden signs on the wall. The owner of the mountain was like this. Xiago and the old deaf son had no choice but to get up after taking their seats, gloomily glanced at the few men in the room. Yu and a man named Jianqiu nodded and smiled, because this man was the only man who spoke well of the official Yin from the beginning to the end. The latter stepped in without knowing it, but still smiled, and then he saw the man in the blue shirt with a sword on his back who was vaguely the leader, and asked with a smile, listen to the accent, is it from Beiju Luzhou? The Beiju Luzhou Jianqiu, who was sharing a table with others, nodded and said, Shanzhou Yeshio, this is my first time here. The blue-clothed swordsman smiled gently, then can I treat you to a drink? Help settle the bill. The man smiled generously and said, it's kind of daring. The other party bid farewell, so Jianqiu had no choice but to stand up and return the salute with fists cupped. A chance meeting, no need to ask each other's names. The swordsman in green shirt turned and left, took out a few snowflakes and put them on the counter. He was the first to cross the threshold and leave the wine shop. The girl in the mink hat clasped the back of her head with both hands, followed closely behind with her shoulders shaking. With his hands behind his back, the old man bowed his head and followed. The queen of the young sword cultivator. The drinkers in the wine shop didn't take that group of people seriously either. 1 immortal, 2 ascensions, and 1 golden pill. There are only 4 sword repairmen. The sword repairer who drank for nothing for no reason suddenly asked, what do you think? The man at the door stopped and turned his head, thinking for a while, we can borrow that principle from shopkeeper Wei. Pause for a moment. The man said, it is easy to talk about my faults after me, but it is difficult to do my things in my place. The wine shop was completely silent at first, and then burst into laughter. Some people laughed endlessly. Someone said hesitantly, which onion are you? The man smiled and said, I am Qin Pingon. Qin Pingon stopped, turned around and asked, is Wei Jianxian still doing something? Wei Yudian blushed and said, young juniors dare not call themselves sword cultivators. It turned out that her identity as a sword repairer was quite embarrassing, because the origin of the flying sword was not correct, and the supernatural power of the flying sword was even weaker. Chen Pingon said, I'm leaving this place soon, please trouble fellow Daoist Wei to talk about something. Wei Yudian quickly explained, don't dare to hide it. I came here to take refuge, to be precise, to avoid the entanglement of Gao Yi, the sword fairy of the Qingwei sect. Chen Pingon said, I guessed it, but this is a personal grievance between your 2 families and sections. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with me, right? Taking a step back, according to the records of the Summer Palace, the last sword cultivator of the Shaanxi sword sect rushed to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Nearly 200 years have passed since the experience of killing demons, and as for the other two batches of Qi fighters, they are not sword masters, and they don't have any record of combat achievements, so it is impossible for the hermit official Shao Xing of the previous generation to deliberately omit the combat achievements of your Shaanxi sword sect. Wei Yudian blushed and said, "Our current head of the Shaanxi sword sect." Chen Pingan cut off the conversation and said, "I know, Ding Fai, whose Taoist name is Tong Jun, has a sword of Jiangzhen, and a flying sword of his life of receiving God. It is easy to count with plum blossoms, especially proficient in hexagrams when hearing the sound. There are many strange stories spread in the countryside of the Lixiaozu dynasty. It is a descendant of the ancient scorpion. It is said that it can curse and kill monks in the same land without seeing blood, and it can also save people invisible. People on the mountain are called ghosts, and they don't dare to provoke them easily. Apart from these superficial things, there are actually some inside stories, which I know. I guess it must be the head of Ding who made a plan for you, asking you to come here and wait for the opportunity. Good luck and avoid bad luck. Or is it a long-awaited prediction that fellow Daoist Longxing will act righteously?" The old deaf boy waved his hands again and again. "I don't have the power to do so, so I dare not take matters into my own hands." Wei Yudian took out a kit from his sleeve, plucked up his courage, handed it to the young hermit who had heard his name for a long time and was fascinated by it, and kept reminding himself to speak faster, and hurriedly explained, "This time I am going down the mountain. Yuan Yu, the headmaster, gave me 3 kits in total. One time, I was asked to choose an auspicious day here to open a shop and sell wine. There was a commandment on the Fenglei note, stop when you meet a dragon, and be happy when you meet a green. Once it was asked his disciple Wang Ke to travel at night one day, and Wang Ke got the chance to combine 2 swords. In the end, the master asked me to open the kit only when I met the dragon and met the green, but repeatedly told me not to read the text content, just face to face. Just hand it over to any one of Long or Qing." Chen Pingan took the kit, took out the note, took a look at it, put it back in the kit, handed it back to Wei Yudian, and said with a slightly relaxed expression, "You can rest assured to do business here from now on. If you travel to Lixiaozu, you will visit Shaanxi sword sect and Fenzhou Weisher. As for when Daoist Wei will be able to return to Lixiaozu, we will wait for the letter from Master Ding to inform you." Xiago asked with his heart, "Shanju, what's going on?" Chen Ping said helplessly, "Hua Furong, the founder of the Shaanxi sword sect, is also the master of Wei Yudian. She has visited the Great Wall of Sword Qi for the 2nd time. She has a good relationship with the Ning Mansion and is a frequent visitor." Xiago suddenly realized, if I had known that there was such a relationship, I wouldn't have knocked out that sword fairy or the master. Chen Pingan asked, "May I ask a question, why is fellow Daoist Wei not a sword cultivator?" Wei Shi, Shangmiao village, Fenzhou, Lixiaozu, is a Taoist family with a long history and one of the 6 great altars in the world. The famous Taifu Temple is the family temple of Wei Yudian. There are 365 colorful hanging sculptures in the Taoist temple, which are unique. Wei Yudian carefully collected the kit, feeling relieved. When she heard the question, she replied with a respectful expression, "The latter is not the embryo of a congenital sword fairy. One of the relics is a flying sword. It has been passed down from generation to generation. I got the initiative to recognize the owner of this flying sword when I was young by chance. The ancestor is temporarily named Xiao Yan. After I was lucky enough to practice it, for more than 100 years, I have only found out one kind of natal supernatural power, which is to imitate the natal flying sword of other sword cultivators, but it can only support a stick of incense time. When the time comes, it will immediately return to its original state. Therefore, it is true that when it is weak, but it is not necessarily true when it is strong. Xiago grinned, such a fun natal flying sword. The ancient sword fairy must have been very motivated to refine it before he solved it. Chen Pingon thought for a while and asked, did Master Ding not give any hexagrams about this hard-won natal flying sword? Wei Yudian hesitated for a moment, and said, every time the master does a fortune-telling, he has to compromise his morality, which consumes a lot of energy. Even so, the master still made a hexagram for me, but the language of the hexagram is relatively general, and there is only one sentence, again and again and three. The head of the sect is a fortune-teller, and there has always been an ancestor's precept that cannot be explained separately. Chen Pingon thought for a moment, and said, I have a suggestion. Let your family or the Shangxi sword sect help you find a flying sword, whether it costs a lot of money or human favor, you try to use the sword refining the sword. Wei Yudian was puzzled, what is refining a sword with a sword, and what is the reason for it? Xiago nodded vigorously, our mountain master is really smart, even she and Xiaomao can't compare. Chen Pingon had no choice but to patiently explain, maybe this flying sword should not be named Xiaoyan, and it is more appropriate to change it to a name similar to Jiu Duo. The so-called 3-by-head ding may mean that this flying sword is the sword can occupy the magpie's nest and the 3 flying swords, and there is a chance to have the natal supernatural power of the 3 flying swords at the same time. This can also explain why the ancient sword fairy who sat on the sea and retreated to death, when he passed away, he would rather use with great perseverance and great painstaking efforts to strip it out. He is unwilling to fuse it with his own soul and add a sense of immortality to the afterlife. The reason is that he is very conceited and valued this natal flying sword. Once it is smelted into nothingness, even if he still has the next life to continue the fairy fate, he can open his mind to remember his previous life, and climb the mountain to practice again, but the world is doomed to have no such special and magical flying sword. Wei Yudian's expression of joy was beyond words. She didn't know how to thank the young hermit for a while. It can't be the kind of incomparably vulgar promise among gifted scholars and beautiful ladies. Even if she was willing to do so, he still despises himself. The old deaf child nodded slightly, he was close to the truth. The gloomy look is as usual, and there is no trace of turmoil in his mood. Whether he was a sword cultivator back then or not, his level now is high or low, and the hidden officials are all the hidden officials. Chen Pingon reminded, since there are some things on the mountain that are unusual, if you get a predestined relationship, you will suffer a catastrophe. Wei Yudian hurriedly stabilized his Dao heart. Chen Pingon said, as for how to collect debts and how to appear in front of you, it depends on your fate with that person. For example, after waiting for a while, seeing that the young hermit did not continue, Wei Yudian could only ask, for example. With us by his side, Wei Yudian's Dao heart is deep, and it is inevitable that he will have no fear. When the manpower is not exhausted, the monks cannot rely on external forces to escape. Hinder. The old deaf child nodded and said, that's the truth. Chen Pingon asked with a smile, such a heavy hand. Xiago laughed, I'm saving his life. The old deaf child still nodded in agreement, Senior Bai Jing's words were true. If it was Qi Tingji who was young, he also heard those words, so it is estimated that this guy is already on his way. Xiago glanced sideways at the old deaf child, and began to give orders to the general priests as the second priest, wake him up. On Luopa Mountain, realm is useless, so it was hard to catch a monster monk who entered Luopa Mountain later than her, and he was used to being a punching bag, so why not squeeze him? The old deaf boy has no brains, so how can he do it? Chen Pingon said, wake him up, hurry up and have a chat. I'm going back to Aquarius Island soon. Only then did the old deaf boy make a move, squatted down, stretched out his hands to hold the fellow's shoulders, and shook a few times, allowing the young sword fairy's soul, muscles, and energy to return to their original positions. Seeing that Gao Yi woke up, Chen Pingon said, your personal grievances with Wei Yudian, I have heard a rough idea. The dynasty where Webster belongs is indeed immoral. You shouldn't break the contract. You came here alone, found Wei Yudian, and wanted to. There is no problem in asking for the principal and interest back. I am not interested in this kind of love and hatred. The reason why Xiago did something to you is because you shouldn't say nasty words here. Gao Yi leaned his back against the wall, raised his head and stared at the man in the green shirt who was in the middle, then looked at the girl in the mink hat out of the corner of his eye, and said with a sneer, "Good trick, I've learned it, dare you report your name." Xiago really wasn't used to this kind of fool who didn't understand the situation. He kicked over, the sole of his shoe stepped on the forehead of the young sword fairy, and the back of his head hit the wall, causing the opponent to faint again. The old deaf boy had no choice but to squat down again to wake up the young sword fairy. Gao Yi didn't dare to speak harshly anymore, he just lowered his head and stretched out his finger to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. Chen Pingan continued, "When Wei Yudian is here to open a shop and sell wine, don't bother her, but as long as she returns to Harantianxia, you can sit on the sea and wait for a rabbit, or seek revenge and collect debts in Lixiazu, each according to his own ability. Do so at your own peril." Gao Yi folded his arms around his chest and remained silent. He is very much like the kind of arrogant young man in the marketplace. He loses even if he loses. Even if his head is split open and his mouth is full of blood, he still has to speak with his eyes. As long as you don't beat me to death today, I will sooner or later kill you one day. The old deaf child rubbed his chin. It's weird, he was slapped away by Senior Bai Jing before. Why is this kid still ignorant of the importance, so he puts on his face with such arrogance? Isn't the most famous monk in Lixiazu the Jinghao of Qinggong Mountain and the master of Tianyu Cave, Shu Nanyuan? The so-called mountain tops of Izhou are not very high. Compared with the Hulong real person of Beiju Luzhou, Lu Jubao of Iazhao is far behind. Since this kid is not a direct disciple of Jinghao or Shu Nanyuan, is he an illegitimate child? Chen Pingan said, "You can be unconvinced, or you can be unconvinced orally, it's up to you. I'm just explaining a fact to you." After saying this, Chen Pingan shook his head, smiled to himself and said, "It's time to find a chance to go to Zhenwu Mountain." Chen Ping glanced at Gao Yi. "In this area north of the Shirwan Dashan and south of the Old Mirage, my words are more effective than the Confucian Temple." Hearing this sentence, Gao Yi hesitated to speak, but finally said nothing. Chen Ping turned around and left. Gao Yi grinned, stood up, stretched out his hand and rubbed his ribs. The pain made him wrinkle his face. That girl in the sable hat looked slender. Her strength was astonishing. What realm? Could it be that she is a martial artist who has a good face and hides her secrets? In Harantianxia, is there such a number one person? Xing Qian. That person is him. Xiago suddenly turned his head and raised his hand, so scared that Gao Yi leaned back and pressed against the wall. Chen Pingan counted the time and said, "You go to your own business, and we will meet again at Luopa Mountain later. I will ask you for your advice on the details of cultivation in the immortal realm." Xiago's face was indifferent. It was very simple for an immortal to break through and ascend, but she just wondered, it doesn't look like the mountain master's behavior style. Chen Ping said with a smile, "Brother asked me to say a few crazy words while I was young. After trying it, I found that I didn't quite adapt to it. It was still awkward. I can avoid it in the future." Afterwards, Chen Pingan said, "Maybe I need to trouble you to keep an eye on this guy, at least 10 days and a half months." Xiago knew it well, and geared up his fists. The Lord of the Mountain suspects that he is a that man Huang has never used. Lixiazu now has a mediocre reputation, very mediocre. Overall, it is much worse than Fuyao Island and Jinjia Island, and only slightly better than Tongya Island. Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Don't forget, Gao Yi is a sword cultivator, not an ordinary Qi practitioner who comes here to visit mountains and rivers and enrich the world. The Great Wall of Sword Qi is extraordinary to Haoran sword cultivator. There are only two possibilities for a sword cultivator to say such things here. Either he is young, he is the suzerain and the sword fairy, he is full of ambition, he does not know the heights of the heavens and the earth, and he hates the Shaanxi sword school so much he and the Wei family felt that they had endured the humiliation for nearly 100 years, and the revenge of the Great Revenge was in front of them, so they got carried away, lost their composure for a while, and blurted out. Either it is Gao Yi, who has long dismissed the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and there are two possibilities. One is that he has an excellent secret teacher, and he is not able to deal with the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The Great Wall of Sword Qi, and who asked about the sword lost and suffered a great loss. There are many records of this kind of sword repair in the Summer Palace. Either Gao Yi is erased by the barren world, which was used for internal strife in Luxiazu. Of course the two possibilities can be combined to make more sense. Xiago exclaimed, "The Lord of the Mountain's eyes are like a torch, and he knows what's going on." Chen Ping glanced at Xiago, who nodded. The old deaf boy said to his disciples from his heart, You, when you reach Luopa Mountain, you can't rely on your master anymore. You may need to support yourself. Yu asked strangely, why did master say that? The old deaf boy shook his head with a bitter face, and didn't explain. Being a teacher doesn't match the ethos of Luopa Mountain. Gao Yi sat back on the ground and began to breathe and adjust his breath. The slap and kick of the girl in the sable hat caused the energy in his body to be overwhelmed, but luckily it didn't hurt Dao's root. In the inner courtyard of the Tiangong, which is called the entrance and one aperture of Gao Yi's Taoism, there are 3 flowers blooming, which are suspended in the air in order of height and height. Unfortunately, there is still a long distance from the point where the spirit and spirit are mixed together, but in the tallest golden flower, there is actually opened up a real-like courtyard, with the gate facing the east. Far away, the sea of clouds is surging, the water is undulating, and there is a towering sacred tree, and there are red qi and green qiu entrenched on the tree, which is the avenue of Gao Yi's 2 natal flying swords manifestation, the sacred tree of the East China Sea, a branch that is soaring. In the Jinhua courtyard, at this moment, it seems to be the scene of the moon in the middle of the night. When Gao Yi branched out a ray of consciousness and came to the main courtyard room here, the person who was leaning outdoors disappeared, and only heard the walking of people but not the human form. A series of subtle sounds of clogs stomping on the ground sounded outside the door. Gao Yi said, "He is Qin. As far as the cost of accommodation is concerned, I have already paid enough. Ask for more." Gao Yi propped his fists on his knees, his eyes were hot, he suddenly started yelling, "Every and maidservant, sooner or later you will sleep." The other party was as usual, indifferent, and regarded his foul language and loud curses as nothing more than the singing of cicadas in the village. Gao Yi said, "You people who have attained the Tao, do you really have no emotions or desires? If it is said that the price of proving the Tao and ascending to the immortals is the price, what is the meaning of immortality?" Probably because this sentence aroused the other party's desire to speak, a woman with a sword and a white dress appeared out of thin air outside the door. Her appearance was extremely cold and beautiful. She was a female ghost that Gao Yi met when he was traveling in Huangmao Mountain when he was young. Filling the void, there are 6 feet of golden body, presenting the appearance of heaven and man. The shape that appears is flawless and pure gold. I only know that her surname is Zheng, and the specific level is unknown, but her swordsmanship is extremely high. Gao Yi was in danger and even died several times, and she helped him secretly. At the beginning of his cultivation, Gao Yi mistook her for an earth fairy ghost. When he became an earth fairy, he guessed that she might be a legendary ghost fairy in the Jade Realm. Now Gao Yi himself is the Jade Realm, then guessed that she was at least in the fairyland, and Gao Yi didn't know if he would become a fairy in the future. would she still be in a higher realm than himself? She looked towards a certain direction in the void, her expression was gloomy, and she said, "There are 4 of them, and 2 of them are in the same realm as me. But if I really want to make a move, I'm afraid I can only win against the young Jin Dan's sword build." Gao Yi fell back on the ground. "I don't know why, just looking at him has exhausted all my energy. I have never encountered such a strange thing in my life." She smiled and said, "Your life? Only a few years." Gao Yi remained silent. She leaned against the door, with her back to Gao Yi in the room. "Now that I know why he meddles in his own business, why do I avoid them?" Gao Yi said, "You said you once stopped in the Hanging Mountain." With a sad expression on her face, she murmured, "Don't bring up the past again." After the patriarchs of the 3 religions dispersed, all kinds of gods, ghosts, and ancient immortals sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain, breaking through the ground one after another. Successfully avoided the robbery, escaped from the robbery, waited for the opportunity, and finally the sky will clear after the rain and see the sky again. The ghost sword fairy surnamed Jing hiding in Gao Yi's mind is just one of them. She once had an agreement with an old person, no oath was required, it was just a gentleman's agreement. As a result, he missed the appointment. But to be precise, she missed the appointment first. It turned out that when he was in the Hanging Mountain, when the 2 parties said goodbye, he did remind her not to try to join the Tao. She had endured it for many years, but finally she couldn't bear it anymore. One falls short, and one loses one's physical body. Presumably this is doomed. The change of heaven and earth is called a great calamity. In this calamity, everyone has his own calamity. Gao Yi said, "What should I say now?" She sighed quietly, "If you can get the approval of a certain sword vein here, I will help you fight for a chance to fight for the Tao. Lixiaozu Jinghao and others, the corpses should give way." Gao Yi asked, "What about you?" She said, "When you have accumulated enough external skills, you will be able to rise from the house during the day, and then we will part ways. Regarding the Dongtian ruins, the foundation of enlightenment, as long as Chen Qinglu doesn't make a move, she actually has a good chance of winning. It's just that there is no need to tell Gao Yi about this kind of thing, lest he be arrogant and blindly entrust it to others, which will lead to bad things." At this moment, a single sword cut through the 2 heaven and earth restrictions in an instant. This sword light cut open from the outside to the inside, but opened the door from the inside to the outside. A man in a blue shirt with a sword on his back came out from that door, and said mockingly, "You are no longer a hermit official, but you are going to work as a criminal officer." Chen Pingon finally understood why Li Xing asked him to come here. Is it to help Confucian Temple to remind her a few words, not to cross the line in the future? The woman in the white dress with the sword on her back frowned slightly. Gao Yi was terrified and hurriedly got up. Beside Chen Pingon, there appeared an existence who had been hiding here for a long time without knowing it. She was a slender, attractive woman, and her appearance was not inferior to that woman in white skirt. Bai Jing's terrifying talent is not only in sword refining, but also in all aspects, perverted and unreasonable. According to the old blind man, if it weren't for some kind of jealousy, she would have been able to join the Tao. In ancient times, under the 14th realm, sword repairer Bai Jing was indeed more invincible than Xiao Mo. Bai Jing smiled and said, "This girl, do you have a Taoist name? Let me hear it." The woman in the white skirt looked indifferent and said nothing. Chen Pingon explained, "If my guess is correct, the senior in front of me is Xing Dan, and she has no Taoist name. It is said that she learned swords from Yunv as a teacher." Bai Jing frowned, deeply aggrieved, hugged the back of his head with both hands, then raised his head high, and looked into the distance. "This body doesn't worry about it. I am most afraid of seeing gentleness in case. Once you see it, you will be reluctant to part with it." Jing Juzhou nodded and said, "Such a Bai Jing is the Bai Jing. She deserves to be the female cultivator who first walked into the gate of heaven in the battle of ascension to heaven. Chen Ping was taken aback when he heard the words, and turned to look at Bai Jing. The first woman to ascend to heaven. This was the first time he had heard of it. In the past, I only heard that in the battle of ascension to the sky, the first Taoist priest opened the way to climb the mountain, and the first male monk to enter the gate was the sword leader who was also one of the 10 heroes in ancient times. Bai Jing said indifferently, "From the first day of practicing swordsmanship and cultivating Taoism, I made an oath to myself that I will look at the earth from the sky as a human being who is not a god." Jing Juzhong said goodbye with a smile and left. No wonder Zhu Lian said to Xiao Mo on the mountain, "Have you ever seen a girl who is more proud than Xiago?" Chen Ping was silent for a moment, and said in his heart, "Xiago, does Xiao Mo know about these past events?" Bai Jing has returned to normal, he laughed and said, "I know, I have nothing to say to him." Chen Ping held back for a long time, and couldn't help cursing, "Damn it, Shemo is an idiot." Bai Jing complained, "Don't talk about Shemo like that." Chen Pingan was speechless. The next moment, he had returned to Aquarius Continent and was in Yongjia County, the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. Probably pride is a high city head, the person you like walks on top of the city head, with pride at your feet. Sort of Coming Chapter 1099. The sky and the earth are clear and bright, washing away the old dust. With an oil paper umbrella under his arm, Chen Ping walked slowly towards the small rented house. Although he was seriously injured, he was relieved of his weight. Bypassing the familiar Yashin temple, when he used to set up a fortune-telling booth as a Taoist priest, Chen Pingan often climbed over the wall to watch the intrigues of the underlings and study their words. Using means to find Gu Kan's traces, Chen Pingan spoke to him, gave Gu Kan an address, and agreed to meet there. Of course, the earth immortals and monks of the upper 5 realms often have means of concealing the weather, and Gu Kan did it on purpose, worrying that Chen Ping would not find him. Chen Ping stepped into a Tianshui alley, and 3 practitioners walked towards him from a distance. Among them was a tough man with arms as long as his knees. Guanyu was a young man with a gloomy expression, "Hongtu, so what if you are not a child anymore? Although you can't be as extraordinary as the sword fairy in ancient times, you can take the head with the flying sword of the founder of the mountain, but you still have to be invincible in the world and famous in the world. The situation is good. Don't underestimate yourself and be discouraged blindly, it will waste your time and energy." The young man nodded with a dull expression, not knowing whether he listened in, or whether it went in from the left ear and out from the right ear. Seeing the figure in the green shirt at the corner of the alley, the man glanced quickly, not paying too much attention, but lowered his voice even more, first told the young man named Hong Tu a few words, and then turned his head to look at the man with 2 eyes. The young woman jumping square with her feet together, her bones were fresh and her face was moving. Seeing the uncle's gaze, she immediately behaved, and the man turned his head and continued to say to them, "This time, the master ordered you to come down the mountain with me. Travel you can only return to the sect after traveling millions of miles across the 7 countries. I hope you understand the truth that there are people outside the mountains and there are people outside the mountains. You must know that there are countless strange people who have been buried in the dust. Often it is only because the law has not arrived, and the real person does not show his face, or we pass each other in the busy city, or we don't know each other across the street." Coincidentally, the woman raised her brows and couldn't help laughing. "Master, there is someone walking away with a sword in front. Is he the so-called master? There are some things that a man should not say. Leaving the sect this time and practicing in the world of mortals, one is to let Hong Tu relax and not be lifeless. He always feels hopeless because he can't practice the magic of the fairy family, which leads him to make several pieces in the world. It's a chivalrous thing to help him regain his spirits. What's more, let the head behind him secretly handpicked as the successor's personal disciple, to learn more about the world, mainly to come to a certain Taoist temple in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom to help her find an opportunity for a fairy family. It turns out that there are 3 natural red lines on the brows of her heavenly court, which are signs of the so-called heavy murder on the mountain, so it takes her to hone in the world of mortals for a few years to get rid of the evil spirit all over her body, and to know the truth of hiding the edge before she can study my family's immortal method. All in all, it is to let her know that it is far from enough compared to the top, and make Hongtu feel that it is more than enough compared to the bottom. The leader is not bad and hard-working. Seeing that there was still a long distance between him and the green-clothed guest, the man still used the secret method of gathering voices to form a line, and pointed out to the 2 juniors, Bao Shu, Hongtu, let's walk the rivers and lakes. When meeting a stranger for the first time, it depends on the person's skill level and martial arts depth. It is not difficult for those who meet, but not for those who are difficult. Remember to pay extra attention to their breathing and footsteps. For example, the person in front of you does have some martial arts skills. It's just that his complexion is slightly pale, his breathing is slightly stagnant, and his turbidity varies, and the force of each footstep landing is not even. It can be seen that the foundation is good, probably because of the excessive drinking, the spirit is a little weaker. Chen Pingan had no choice but to pretend not to hear this comment. The young woman named Bao Shu in the team is indeed suitable for cultivating Taoism. It is indeed a piece of jade in the rough, with the aptitude of an earth immortal. Probably they all came into being as the times require, and there are such characters in every world nowadays. Some sects are busy. Nian Ganlang of the Ministry of Justice has long secretly dispatched more people to Aquarius continent and even Tongya continent to find all kinds of cultivator embryos. The 16 geniuses sent to Luopa Mountain by the Dali Imperial Court have already boarded the military ferry and will soon arrive at Nujiadu. The woman asked, Uncle Gao, I heard from Uncle He that there are immortal fairies, inns, and fairies in the world. As long as someone finds out the exact address, you will see monks and spirit gods all over your eyes. The man smiled and said, to put it lightly, it's not so easy to meet. You Master He, you just ran into a group of chi refiners in the deserted temple by chance. If you can learn to control yourself in the future, I think this person's journey to the top of martial arts will not stop here. The 2 sides passed each other. After walking a dozen or so steps, Bao Shu laughed softly and said, Master is famous for his kind heart. According to his temper, he will definitely stop and talk to this person. Those who are of the same generation as the head, except for the uncle Gao Zhu, privately say that her master is a good man. When encountering injustice outside the mountain, take care of it. If you encounter unfortunate people in the world, you will help them. For this reason, the development of the sect and his own practice have been affected a lot, but the head of the sect always says that a loss is a blessing. Not long after she went up the mountain, she overheard some harsh words over the past few years, saying that the sect master was too soft-hearted, not firm in his Taoism, and not like a person who practiced Taoism, which resulted in him having little academic ability but no moral ability. Deep down in her heart, she felt that these statements were true. A person who cultivates the Tao must have the appearance of awe among gods, and should not put a clear Taoist heart that should be shining in the mud, and defile his own spirit. Hong Tu didn't know whether it was a coincidence or a blessing in his heart. He turned his head suddenly, just in time to see the man in the blue shirt with the sword turned his head to look at him, and he looked at him. I heard a strange voice saying in my ears, if you have leisure time, you can look for the stall of Daoist Wu and calculate the future. It's very clever, the price is fair, and you won't waste your money. Hong Tu's heart was shaken, and when he saw the other party pointing to his ear, maybe he was signaling the tip of his ear, and happened to overhear their conversation, and they talked about the fortune-telling booth. Hong Tu turned around and asked hastily, please enlighten me, senior. If someone is late in martial arts and is not a child, can he really become a master of martial arts? But I saw that the man in the green shirt who didn't show the mountains and the water showed a ladder cloud vertical method like a light jumping technique. His feet overlapped and cracked in the air, and his figure was higher than the eaves of the alley in an instant. Traced. Bao Shu heard the movement behind her, turned her head and took a look, only saw the cyan corner of the clothes. She was not surprised and asked, "Uncle, are you a master?" The man didn't feel that he was mistaken, and said with a smile, "The movement is not small, and it is so tall." Chen Pingan sat on a roof, thought for a while, looked in the direction of Jiao Mountain, and didn't bother Ma Kukxuan's disciples who hadn't matured yet. It is only natural to repay kindness and revenge, and it is not only a matter of one's own family, but also a matter of the world. Gu Kan stared at him blankly. "Are you sure you have wiped out Ma Shi?" Chen Pingan changed the topic. "I took a temporary trip to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, met your master, and chatted casually. Baidi's city will be closed soon, and he invited a female sword fairy named Xing Dan. Even though the guard is a ghost, she has very high swordsmanship and has a long history. Her swordsmanship has been passed down side by side with Zhou Shenxi's Tsuqing in recent times." Gu Kan nodded. To be able to let Jing Juzhong personally invite the sword cultivator to be the stalker, the Taoism must not be weak. Gu Kan said in a heartfelt voice, "The injury is not serious. After returning to Luopa Mountain, do you need to retreat for a while?" Chen Pingan said, "It doesn't hinder Lu Xianyang from being the best man." Gu Kan said, "If it's really not possible, let Lu Xianyang postpone the wedding banquet." Chen Pingan looked straight at Gu Kan. Gu Kan said helplessly, "Joke, tease, make a joke, seriously. I'm not worried about your compromising your Taoism. In case something hinders your Taoism, let's talk a few light words to help you relieve your boredom." Chen Ping stood up slowly, and introduced them one by one. "I won't let you be busy for nothing. Let me introduce you. My pseudonym is Pu Lu, and my real name is Su Fu. I'm in the nascent soul realm. There's not much chance of breaking through. Breaking through the realm is not difficult. Shinku, the bottleneck of the 7 realms of warriors, you can enter the Yuanyu realm immediately. I have already discussed with them, as long as you are willing to recruit, they can go to your side. Just take care of the food, pay or not, look at your mood." These former, superior men, who were brought out of Ma Mansion by Chen Pingan, were either old gods or great masters. They each had a meal and hung up. The old woman was burned at the stake, and the ghost guard was given a solid meal. It was even worse for Grandmaster Shen. In short, they were all miserable to the point where people couldn't bear to look back. Now they just think about it and their livers tremble. If Qin Jianxian hadn't asked them to follow, saying that there was an opportunity to give away, the old woman would have thought of running away, not to mention Yu Xianghua, she would have thought of traveling to other continents. As for Guangyu, he also has the idea of returning to his homeland, and Shinku even wants to find a clean place in the wilderness. At least for a year and a half, the old warrior is a living person and he doesn't want to see him again. Gu Kan remain silent. "I came to help, please these. It's just watching from the sidelines, and in the end you talk to me about the reward." If it were someone else, Gu Kan would probably just say, "I don't collect waste." Chen Pingan raised his hand and patted Gu Kan's shoulder lightly. "You, a new suzerain who was born in the genealogy of Baidi City, should I introduce you some children of famous schools with strict ancestral precepts and upright gentlemen with dignity? Be open and above board with you every day. What's more, this group of people, who have just suffered a lot, are the most honest, and they can be used by your new sect. Their realm is not high, but they all have a lot of minds. They know how to behave and are willing to do things." Gu Kan glanced at Chen Pingan, didn't say anything, turned her head to look at those few. He is polite and courteous in dealing with people now, without leaking water, clasped his fists and said with a smile, "Fortunately, my family is not big now. If I can get 3, it is a blessing for the younger generation to have the help of an elder. Although I don't know the identity of the Confucian shirt youth in front of me, but as long as he is Chen Jiangxian's friend, how bad is his identity? Therefore, the 3 of them all looked flattered, and returned the gift one after another. In fact, 1 nascent soul and 1 golden elixir, plus a 7th realm martial artist who is about to enter the far journey realm, is not bad. Just such a number 3 person, who founded a sect on any continent, as long as he doesn't compare with the time-honored sects, the atmosphere is not small. Just say that a few decades ago, in Shujian Lake, Lu Zimeo's Qingsha Island was almost such a family property. Gu Lingyan pouted. These 3 are lucky. After entering my son's sect, and going out, I got an extra amulet. After all, the authentic ancestral court of my sect is the Baidi city and Jingzhuzhong. It depends on the owner to beat the dog. Even if the 3 of them hit a hard nail, the patriarch Gu Kan doesn't have enough face, so does Jingzhuzhong have enough face. And they, as the characters personally recommended by Chen Pingan, on the side of the suzerain Gu Kan, they have an extra life-saving talisman invisibly. Gu Kan introduced Huang Lai, who had just been recruited by his side. Huang Lai has just stepped down as a national teacher. Chen Pingan clasped his fists and said with a smile, "I've seen Senior Huang." Huang Lai looked solemn and solemnly returned the gift, "Little golden pill, how can you be worthy of the word senior? To practice Taoism and longevity, those who have achieved it are the first. I have met Mr. Chen." Chen Pingan couldn't help laughing. Gu Lingyue laughed unceasingly. Hey, he gave a unique opinion for, sir. Old man Huang is so good at flattering people, no wonder he can be a national teacher. Chen Pingan asked, what about others? Since Gu Kan is here, Lu Xianyang must be indispensable. Gu Kan said with a smile, this guy ran to Jinwu Mountain to block the door. Chen Ping rubbed his brows. Gu Kan said, I declare in advance that it was his idea that we partnered up to meet in Yushuan Kingdom this time, and I can at most be considered a helper. Chen Ping said angrily, you are showing loyalty. Gu Kan laughed and said, I'm used to selling him. Chen Pingan is used to it. Gu Kan said, Pei Qian is also here, and he is at the Qinghuang Temple in the capital right now. Before Chen Pingan could say anything, Gu Kan said first, it's what Lu Xianyang meant. Seeing that Chen Pingan still wanted to talk, Gu Kan was most familiar with his temperament, and immediately asked a key question with his heart. What crime did they suffer in the Ma Mansion? Mess. If I don't find them a few bottles of panacea, calm down quickly, the sequelae will be too great. Gu Kan is a bystander, and his realm and master's biography are all there. On the other hand, Pu Lu and the insiders are not clear about his current precarious situation. Chen Pingan roughly explained, except for the fact that ghosts are relatively better, the other two are not so fuel efficient. I helped them tailor several small methods, setting up a thunderstorm, giving fire torture, and the martial arts. Discipline. A lot of them pass by and don't miss them, and a lot of them are fined if they bump into each other. Gu Kan couldn't help laughing, and gloated, it's fine for Shen Ke to make it through. After all, he is a warrior. What about Pu Lu and Guan Yu? Even if the old woman has no chance to become Yu Pu, the problem is that even if she has a great opportunity now, she dares to retreat, dare to break through, dare to face the inner demons. Chen Pingan said, in the future, as long as they hope to retreat and break through the realm, I will help them with a letter from you, to wipe out all their memories, just like they have never seen me, and it will not hurt their fundamentals. It just erased the memory. Gu Kan remain silent with complicated eyes. Chen Ping laughed at himself. Compare me with Mr. Zheng. Can you compare? You think so highly of a cultivator in the immortal realm, and insult a 14th realm mentor who wants to establish a religion and be called his ancestor. Gu didn't feel much about the words, establishing a religion calling the ancestors, as if he had expected it long ago. Hearing these words, his Tao heart was not disturbed. Instead, he was concerned about the 3 words, immortal land. Chen Ping stretched out his hands to hold Gu Kan's head. I am both a fairy and a suzerain. Lu Xianyang is still a suzerain, and you are the only one who is not a fart. You only have the Jade Realm next to you, what the hell? Gu Kan was speechless. Chen Ping said with a smile, this is what I call a joke, a joke. After entering the house, the old women looked around. There was nothing to see in the palm-sized land. They were very surprised. This is where Chen Jianxian stayed in the capital? Would it be too shabby? It's just that they thought about it again, and they quickly felt relieved. How can the great sword immortal act according to common sense? Just by looking at Qi, I can roughly tell that it is a Taoist priest who is proficient in fire. Building a furnace to refine water pills is probably a strange person who dares to refine golden pills both inside and outside. I guess the realm of the master may not be very high, but the power of the outer pill is not shallow. Why, have we met? The few people I met in Tianshui Hutong just now seem to be going to Chongyang Temple to seek immortality. There are many legal traditions of Taoism, only the Weidan school and the inner alchemy school. At the first level of the Jindan realm, there is a watershed. Under the Jindan, the Weidan gains power. Seeking external objects to strengthen oneself often leads to rapid breakthrough. On top of the golden elixir, although the outer elixir will not become tasteless, it is not that important, but there are exceptions. On the other side of the Qingming world, the outer elixir also has a few Dharma veins, which can be directed to Feishing. On the other side of Tongya Island, Lu Yong's Qinghu Palace belongs to the typical Taoist Weidan lineage. Gu Kan said, I just met and chatted casually. The master inside seems to be a Jindan Earth immortal. He is quite courageous and dares to call himself the Daoist Huelu. Chen Ping laughed it off. Gu Lingying said softly, it's not Qingming Tianxia. The Taoist name is unique and cannot be taken without authorization. The only one is as precious as the road to the Tao. On Haoran Tianxia, besides the genealogy monks, the Taoist name is also it's not just taken casually. Chen Pingan nodded. Gu Kan stopped talking about this matter, and changed the subject and asked, do you want me to go to Zhenhua Mountain with the 3 mountain talisman and call Lu Xianyang over? Chen Pingan nodded and said, then you go and come back quickly, I will be lazy and wait for you here. Lu Xianyang once knocked over Lu Chen's fortune-telling booth, and clamored to hit him once. In the past, he didn't know the identity of the lotus-crowned Taoist priest, so he didn't hesitate, but now even if he knew it was Lu Qin, Lu Xianyang still didn't hesitate at all. After Gu Kan left, Chen Ping took out a talisman from his sleeve, turned it into a streak of color, and quickly swept out of the house. When the talisman fell to the ground, it was Wu Di, a middle-aged Taoist, who was already in Chongyang Temple. Outside the wall. The main reason was that Gu Kan was inadvertently involved in some kind of cause and effect. Chen Pingan needed to find out and see it with his own eyes before he could rest assured. What's more, when he met those people from the mountain foot, in that Tianshui alley, Chen Pingan felt that the matter was big or small. According to his habit, he still wanted to believe what he saw. Gu Lingyu just pretended not to know the reason. There are no rules in the wild hometown, but there is no lack of pride. Because of the lack of calculations, the kind of life-and-death friendship may be more than that of Haoran. But it was the first time she saw a relationship like Gu Kan and Chen Pingan. The old woman and the Ma family members are still speculating about the identity of the young man in Confucianism. Although he was arranged to go somewhere, most of the time he would follow that young man for dinner, but as long as he didn't follow Mr. Qin to Luopa Mountain, he would be fine. Before leaving, Gu Kan glanced at Huang Lai. You've whacked me twice on someone while I was around. When I'm not around, if you still dare to act like this, accepting you as an enshrinement on the same day, and then cleaning up the door on the same day, this kind of thing cannot be done by others, but I, Gu can do it very casually. Huang Lai seemed guilty, and hurriedly nodded his head. Don't worry, there will never be another chance for Gu Zongzhu to misunderstand. Inside Chongyang Temple, the scenery is quiet. In the setting sun, the rosy ochre water forms a paper, the pattern is like runes, and the fish in the pond are like being in a Taoist book, eating immortal characters. There is a lone bird rushing to the waves, fleeting. An old Taoist priest with a long beard came up. Qing Fengxian, who was the owner of this place, noticed something strange in the temple. The old Taoist stepped on the square step, extremely majestic. What I saw in my eyes was a middle-aged Taoist priest enjoying the scenery by the water. I don't know whether it is a colleague or a fellow. The old Taoist was not sure about the other party's intentions for a while. If he said that the temple is closed all year round, in this capital, there are not many friends who visit, and there are no good men and women who come here to burn incense. So the other party either came over the wall uninvited, or the man of the right way with real magical powers, able to shrink the earth's veins, thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, just like now. Qing Fengxian sized it up, had a guess, and asked with a smile, but Daoist Wu who set up a stall in Higher Lane, Yongjia County, Wushengua. Just based on the other party's attire, it is impossible to tell which line of law on the mountain belongs to. Chen Pingan nodded with a smile, and said straight to the point, Wu Di, the poor Taoist priest, has no Taoist name. Just now I heard from a friend that Guanju Cheng's Taoist name is Huelu. The poor Taoist has lived here for many days, and passed by Guiguan several times. I didn't dare to bother, so I didn't go to the door, and today I heard that my friend mentioned Qingjinren, and his words were mostly admiration for the temple master, for fear of missing a senior who has attained the Tao, so the poor Taoist dared to come here to talk about it. Qing Fengxian stroked his beard and smiled, and said narrowly, how can the self-appointed Taoist name be taken seriously, fellow Taoist Wu? Don't be frightened, or treat the poor Taoist as a villain and plan to ask the county government for rewards. Chen Pingan said, the Lord is joking. Qing Fengxian didn't bother to go around with this person, he was not afraid of the swaying shadow, and the good time was limited after all, he shouldn't be wasting in this kind of hypocrisy, so he said directly, Ming people don't talk dark words, dare to ask fellow Daoist Wu to come here to explore the scenery, or should we study Taoism and weigh the poor Taoism? If it is said that colleagues are enemies, but he lives in seclusion in this Chongyang temple, concentrates on alchemy, takes 2 apprentices, and has nothing to do with the world. With this fellow Daoist who set up a stall to make money, while water doesn't violate river water, there is no reason to cross. Chen Pingan smiled and said, may I ask you, is Qing Guanzi's ancestor from the Loguan sect? Qing Fengxian was silent for a moment, then heaved a long sigh, showing a little sentimental expression. I never thought that fellow Daoist Wu would know such ancient things. To tell you the truth, the poverty Dao is indeed from a side branch of the Loguan sect, but it is not orthodox. The same source is different. The source of water has long been exhausted. The branch of Pin Dao is now in such a bleak situation. In ancient times, real people came out in large numbers. At that time, among the Taoists in the world, there was a saying that the Loguan school was the highest and the Donghua school was the largest. As for the Taoist legal system of the Luguan sect, apart from being good at astronomy and divination, they are also very good at alchemy. Otherwise, it will not be able to stand up to the highest. After Chen Ping confirmed that the other party's words were true, he felt a little helpless. It turned out that this hidden thread, which was like a fish lying on the ground, was not in Gu Kan, but in himself. The old Taoist master of Donghai Taoist Temple, the master of Bixiao Cave, he secretly took care of the Tonggishao Jinding Temple of the Loguan School, and even asked Luopishan and Jiang Shangjin not to do anything to Xiao Yuanran by name. The old temple master gifted a quarter of the Ohua blessed land in Luoba mountain to repay the debt. Need to repay a sum of interest in this Chongyang temple first. I don't know the previous 3 people, going back up, who would not be involved in a certain old patriarch of the Loguan sect. Chen Pingan thought for a moment, and began to talk nonsense in a serious manner. Since Master Jing is willing to treat people with sincerity, it's not good for the poor Taoist to play tricks. Yizhou, by chance, in a certain place in the north, there is a lot of affinity with the legal system handed down by a certain ancestor of the Loguan school. Just like planting, the flowers should bloom here, and the melon will fall. Qing Fengxian let out a bit of doubt, apparently half believing and not daring to believe at all. Is there really such a good thing that fell from the sky? Chen Pingan continued, Pindao is in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. Things are over, and I will continue to travel to other places soon. There is a ghost house that is rumored to be in the Zhugan Hutong of Yongjia County. Grass, when the master goes there, he can tell when he sees it. The owner of the house is Shui Rui. Although she looks like a ghost, she is devoted to Taoism and has a clear spirit. Pindao has lived here for several months, has a very close relationship with her, and they call each other Taoist friends. She has a personal friendship with Tong Shanjun, the god named Dazhu, and it is because of her that Pindao was lucky to meet Tong Shanjun in the house. Apart from alchemy, you can take the time to talk about it, and say that you and Wu Di are old friends on the road. Qing Fengxian pretended to be calm, and he was amazed in his heart. The fellow Taoist in front of him is deeply blessed, and he was able to have a relationship with that Tong Shanjun. This kind of thing, especially in the Shishan area, dare not talk nonsense and put gold on your face, otherwise you are really not afraid of being struck by lightning. In fact, Qing Fengxian was more surprised than frightened just because his most important potion of medicine was originally scheduled to be smelted at the noon of this year's Dragon Boat Festival. As long as the medicine is successful, no more, no less, there are only 2 pills, one is indispensable, and more is even worse, the 2 pills just divide yin and yang. But the old Taoist is not sure about this, just because he lacks one of the most important medicinal materials. Even though he has exhausted his mind, he chose the site of Chongyang Temple as a cauldron, and found a pair of noon couplets as a way to suppress the victory. However, there is still a lack of vital alchemy items, which caused the alchemy furnace to light a fire but could not achieve the kind of running water described in the alchemy book. If you can burn a fairy wormwood, it is like a fire in a steamer, smoked and moxibustion transported to Guanyi, which has been condensed for many years. Isn't it? Heaven is beautiful. The reason why the old Taoist didn't look happy is because he didn't know the grade of the wormwood at the gate of the ghost house for the time being. How big is the firepower after burning? The old Taoist became more and more suspicious. Met this Taoist Wu Di today, could it be due to a mysterious Taoist fate? If you really complied with the other party's words, it should blossom and bear fruit, and the fruit will come to fruition. And Chen Pingan's original intention was to help the temple master and Shui Rui match up first, so that the 2 parties could take care of each other and form a good relationship. In the future, if there are any difficulties in Chongyang Temple, Shui Rui or Tong Wenchang, Chen Pingan will come to weigh whether or not to help, and how to help. Chen Pingan was also quite surprised, and asked seemingly casually, Pindao once saw a poor young man from a foreign country named Bai Yun. He and his grandfather once sold pictures of spring cows. When they passed by the stall, Pindao helped him make a divination. I wonder if Master Jing has ever seen this young man who has the method of fate on the mountain. Qing Fengxian shook his head. Pindao doesn't stay at home, so I've never seen this young man before. It's just that the old Taoist quickly added, the 2 apprentices of poor Dao, who occasionally go shopping in the market, may have seen this person. Chen Pingan looked as usual, and said with a smile, the poor Taoist thought that this fate of the immortal family would fall on Qingguanzhu and Chongyangguan, but now it seems that it may not be. This is the benefit of a high realm, and the secret words in the hearts of others resound like thunder. The wormwood tree hanging at the door was given to Shui Rui by Lu Qin before, lest Chen Ping's fight with Ma Kushuan would make too much noise and accidentally hurt her ghost soul. And Lu Qin came to Howran this time, and he was busy with the business, looking for the noon fish, which was difficult to catch for gods, that is, the later young Ning Ji, and now Chen Ping's direct disciple. Could it be that according to the original context, Ning Ji, who was not found by Lu Qin and Chen Pingan, would enter this Chongyang temple, and the young man would be favored by Qing Fengxian, worship him as a teacher, step by step, and finally embark on the road of Taoism? Chen Pingan couldn't help laughing. Does this mean that he cut off the barbarian halfway and robbed the opponent's favorite disciple? Lu Qin has already reached this level, and he wants to use the wormwood tree as compensation to indirectly help the old Taoist consummate alchemy. Settle a cause and effect. It seems that the next time I visit Middle-earth Divine Continent, besides Longhushan Tiancher Mansion, if I have a chance, I will go to Middle-earth Lu family to borrow books to read. Chen Ping smiled and said, "It won't hinder the viewer's hospitality." The old Taoist asked doubtfully, "Why do fellow Taoists say this?" People of the Taoist sect are most particular about a receiving spirit, and will not easily disperse their spiritual consciousness. This is the meaning of the problem of cultivating the Tao. Do not go into the treasure mountain and return empty-handed. You must remember to have no distracting thoughts, be devout to the Tao, and do not complain about the sky and others, and make your body and mind hesitant. Believe that your own opportunity is waiting for you. After all, Zhong Shan was no more eloquent than senior brother Song, and he was not good at words. He just slapped his head in a polite manner, and sincerely thanked the strange Taoist priest for his words and teachings. Chen Pingan reached out and patted the young man's shoulder, and said with a smile, "Cultivating the Tao is hard work, let's keep working hard." Qing Fengxian originally wanted to take this Daoist Wu to his alchemy place to have a look, but unexpectedly the other party directly said, "The weight of the tripod is unquestionable." When the old Taoist heard this, he was speechless for a moment. Is there any similarity between the saying of fisherman's respect and the previous sentence of the Confucian shirt youth? Chen Pingan said politely to the Master Jing viewer, "Purity and asceticism, no competition with things, true spirit." Then he took his leave and left, and the smiling old temple master didn't keep him, but secretly made up his mind to go to that ghost house to try his luck and see how the wormwood looks. On the way, Chen Pingan just passed by those people again. Taoist Wudist square steps are no worse than that of the old temple master. Seeing the old Taoist with a mortal demeanor, after confirming his identity, the short man took out a secret letter handwritten by the master, bowed his head and presented it with both hands. "Blessings from the Yao family, by the order of the master, bring the treasure tree. Hong Tu came here to see Qing Jinren." Qing Fengxian took the letter, opened it on the spot, read the content, looked up at the young woman named Bao Shu. The old Taoist nodded and said, "It is indeed a material that can be made, and she will stay in the temple to practice with the poor. 3 to 5 years is fine." People are in good spirits on happy occasions, and the old Taoist is in a good mood. In fact, it is said that it is an offshoot of the Loguan school, and it is correct. It is similar to a villager who said that his surname was an emperor hundreds of years ago. It's just that in the dark, he felt that the opportunity for the success of the alchemy this time was really on the so-called wormwood plant that Wu Daochang called. Young and ignorant, he once uttered wild words, "Whoever is as idle as Lao Tzu is originally a fairy, and he refuses to be a fairy." Now that he has a small success in cultivating the Tao, he is hopeful that he will succeed in alchemy. Whoever is as crazy as a poor Taoist has already succeeded in alchemy and refuses to accept the golden elixir. Master observes him for a few more days. If he is really simple and honest, it will not be difficult for him to become a resident Taoist priest, but if he thinks he can't make money and doesn't want us to worship in Chongyang, then forget it. Zhong Shan wrote it down silently, with a happy expression on his face. It is estimated that his Taoist temple is old and needs to be repaired everywhere. The reason that Brother Song figured out for himself the phrase, know how to do some bricklayer work, has made great contributions and convinced the master. Thousands of atmospheres turn back to the place, and the immortals from ancient times created this pavilion. There is a huge stone outside the pavilion, the top of which is cut into a platform by a sharp weapon. Sitting on the stone platform was a burly middle-aged Taoist, with a bearded face and suet-like luster on his skin. He seemed to be exhaling breath, with two white smoke hanging from his nose, like a white snake hanging on the wall. Water around him. It was foggy, and when the Taoist suddenly opened his eyes shone brightly, which was quite frightening. The burly Taoist spread out his palms, looked at the lines, discerned the mountains by inch, and looked at the four seas. Since he is a person who can watch the mountains and rivers in his palm, the key is that he can also look at the breath at the same time. Numerology is in the dark, personnel and affairs are new as old, long-term doubts are not everywhere, one by one seems to have been. There is a pair of teenagers and girls sitting upright in the pavilion. Both of them are so beautiful that they forget the customs. The handsome young man with long beard and bangs, with a face like a crowned jade, sword eyebrows and star eyes, with a long sword across his knees at this moment, can be included in the book, as a talented scholar or a young knight-errant. There is a young girl next to her, who is so beautiful that she is so beautiful that people are at a loss for words. They are not surprised to see this scene. This master who has just known for less than a year, once learned the lock nose technique from an unknown ancient stranger. It's just that they have all kowtowed and learned art from their masters, but they still don't know their master's name or their sect. Is this a strange rule unique to the gods on the mountain? Moreover, the master only said that he was following the order of his master, and he was going to Huzhou, northwest of Dali, to save a person with natural immortal roots, and bring him back to the mountains, so that he would be able to honor the sect in the future. As an acceptance ceremony, the Taoist once gave them a gift, one long and one short 2 swords. He took off the long sword and presented it to the young disciples. The length is about 3 feet and 4 inches. The sword pouch is old, colorful, and beautifully carved, but the master did not tell the name of the sword, only said that it is a famous ancient sword, which was forged by a real person from a land in a big mountain. Bending and stretching, you only need to wrap it around your waist when not in use. It used to be a sharp weapon for self-defense when Taoists climbed mountains and refined qi. No matter how ignorant the young man is, he knows that it is a treasure. Usually, he only needs to pull this long sword out of the sword pouch 2 feet, and he will feel that it is shining brightly, and the sword energy is strong. The middle-aged Taoist gave the young apprentice a short sword again, but never said its origin. I just told them to get close to the sword on weekdays, and to cultivate the sword energy with their own Taoism. Naturally, the two of them couldn't understand what Dao Qi and Sword Qi were, but they just figured out a reason, thinking that it was the same as that person's principle of raising jade and jade raising people. That's why girls use daggers as pillows every night when they fall asleep. After the Taoist opened his eyes and spread his palms, he glanced down and frowned slightly, but he quickly recovered his calm Taoism and closed his eyes again. The girl whispered, "Senior brother, Master himself just refines qi day and night without resting for a moment. Master can fasten grains instead of eating whole grains. We are in this Taoist temple, but we have to climb over the wall and go in and out like thieves. Why? Why don't you go directly to Nazhou to find someone?" The young man looked indifferent, shook his head and said, "How can I guess what Master thinks? The two sides have learned martial arts and practiced qi for less than a year, and their light body kung fu has reached the level of proficiency, jumping between the walls and walls as fast as apes, and castrating in the mountains and forests faster than birds. It's just that they still haven't practiced swordsmanship, and their master has never taught them, so there is nothing they can do. As for the 3 masters and apprentices in the Taoist temple, it is indeed a strange thing that they do not know their existence until now. A woman in a green dress appeared out of thin air and came slowly. She stepped into the gazebo and said yen yen with a smile, "You are the 2 disciples that senior brother Lu just accepted. Which one is Fengqing and which one is Jingding?" Ignoring their posture as if facing a formidable enemy, the woman introduced herself, "My surname is Shao. In terms of seniority, I am your uncle. I will not mention the name for now. Our school has very strict rules." They stood up and saluted this Uncle Shao who popped out of nowhere. Junqing are all fairy seedlings, so they should cherish and love themselves. The woman in the green skirt stretched out her hand and pressed them twice, so that they don't have to be restrained, and said with a smile, "Cultivate well, the road can be expected." While chatting with the 2 children, she said to the burly Taoist priest with her heart, "Senior brother Lu, why did it become so lively all of a sudden?" In one day, 3 groups of guests came. The Taoist replied in secret words, "There is no reason not to get together." The woman in the green skirt said, "Gukan and Baidi City, the maid Gu Lingyu, and the national teacher Huang Lai, how did they get together?" "I just got a spy report from the main hall. A wild female cultivator, her Taoist name is. As for the number of her cultivation path, how did she follow Gu Kan, from the wild to the Howren world? Even the main hall is not clear. Check, senior brother Lu, do you think it's strange?" The burly Taoist said, "The really important news is not Gu Kan and Mrs. Wu, but the Taoist Wu Di who just left here." The eyes of the woman in the green dress lit up. "Is there something to talk about? Can it be more important than Gu Kan and—" The Taoist said, "This person's true identity is one of the talisman avatars of Lord Qin Shan of Luoba Mountain." The woman in the green skirt asked, "Is he going to avenge Mrs. Ma?" The burly Taoist said, "The revenge is over. The previous vision in the sky is the proof of Ma Kuxuan's death." The woman in the green dress wondered, "How did you recognize it?" As for Ma Kuxuan's demise, she was not too surprised. She just couldn't believe it before. Ma Kuxuan really died like this. This news is too unbelievable. You must know that many people outside are very optimistic about Ma Kuxuan's ascension within 100 years. She doesn't care, it's none of her business and hangs up high, what to do with so many other things. The Taoist said, "Gu Kan leaves with his front foot, and Wu Di arrives with his back foot. Is it hard to guess?" The woman in the green dress had a strange expression, and she was a little worried. "I just said why I lost the aura of Gong Sun Girl out of thin air. Could it be him?" A certain book of landscape travel notes that sold very well and was banned. I don't know how many spectators have been deceived. What kind of sympathy for Qin Ping, that Qin Shanju, has been a ruthless master since he was young. The Taoist said, "This kind of abandoned disciple with a weak heart, don't you still want to help her return to the teacher?" The woman in the green skirt sighed faintly, unwilling to entangle senior brother Lu on this topic. Although they are referred to as brothers and sisters, they are always from the same family and have different bloodlines. Thinking of the business, she asked in her heart, "Uncle Qing still can't open his mind and remember the past. The main hall has asked about this matter, how should I reply?" The middle-aged Taoist nodded and said, "Uncle Qing practiced very smoothly in his previous life, and his blessings were profound. This life has become a burden, and it is even more difficult to get enlightened. If you return to the main hall, at least for 200 years, you don't have to expect Uncle Qing to return to the mountain." She sighed and rubbed the space between her brows. In his previous life, Uncle Qing, at this age, was in the Ascension realm. This body is now the Jindan Dixian, so he is so complacent. An expert once made a very vivid analogy. Uncle Ching is a cornucopia of prosperity that he does not ask for wealth and luck. Zhong Tu Yuxuan, Ai Zu Wei Shi, Bei Pingzu He Xiaoliang, Tongis Hao Huang Ting are all such people. Then she was a little worried. Will Mr. Cheng's roots be broken by that Gu Can? She was unwilling to have any entanglements with Baidi City. In fact, it wasn't her, it was anyone. The burly Taoist shook his head and said, no matter how talented Gu Can is, I don't have the vision yet. She pressed on and asked, Gu Can can't see it, what about that person? Uncle Ching is also true. He proclaimed himself the Taoist name Hui Lu, and it is easy to make suspicious people. The Taoist thought for a while, Master Ching has a good fortune and strong Dao Qi. Even if he is in a daze, he can isolate the secrets by himself, just like the protection of the fist of a martial arts master. Each has divine help. Chen Shanzhu has just set foot in Wang Qi, so he should not recognize it. Out. She breathed a sigh of relief, and said tentatively, that girl Bao Shu is really talented, why don't you give it to the younger sister? Bao Shu is the nickname of a woman from Nahu, and her full name is Yuan Chaoxian. In the secret book of the main hall, the evaluation is excellent. It is the natural talent that all three divisions of the school want to compete for. Seeing that the senior brother was unwilling to talk to her at all, the woman in the green skirt continued to persuade, you have accepted Fengqing and Jing Ding as apprentices, so you must let the junior sister get a little bit of credit. I have been busy in Luzhou, Beiju these years, there is hard work without merit, it's time to accept a promising apprentice. Let the beauty be credited, this gentleman's business. The burly Taoist said calmly, unfortunately, I am a swordsman and Taoist. The woman in the green skirt was dumbfounded. He suggested, you can take advantage of Uncle Cheng's memory of his previous life, and ask him to ask Song Juchuan or Zhong Shan to be your disciple. The woman in the green dress laughed angrily when she heard the words, ask senior brother Lu, when will we be able to accept male disciples from our lineage? It turns out that her lineage has always abided by the ancestral precepts, passing on from daughter to son. Otherwise, she really wouldn't mind asking Qing Fengxian for an apprentice. It should be known that there were gods in Zhongshan in ancient times, whose Taoist name was Zhuyin, and they were not under the jurisdiction of the Confucian temple. According to legend, the Taoist temple formed its own heaven and earth. Later, he was beheaded by his close friend Jian Xian, praying for the solution of the soldiers and transformation, and turning into a human body in the next life. At that time, the person who handed him the sword to help him escape was none other than Pei Min, one of Haoran's 3 masters of swordsmanship. She suddenly asked, why did Uncle Ching come to Aquarius continent to make alchemy? The Taoist priest seemed to say perfunctorily, there is God's will in the dark. There was a moment of silence. The woman in the green skirt was in a depressed mood, he is the only one I miss. She was a little moody, she thought highly of him enough, but she still underestimated him. If you hadn't misjudged and met him in Beiju Luzhou, the world might not be the way it is today. The Taoist smiled a little and said, besides, what you call high opinion, junior sister Xiao, doesn't seem to be very high, is it just a martial artist who travels far away? And am sure that he can only have it in his life. 2 flying swords on the 1st and 15th day of the new year. The woman in the green skirt avoided the serious and took the light, with a helpless look on her face, she said, warrior of the 8 realms, is it Chinese cabbage? The Taoist asked, is there any other news from the main hall? The woman in the green skirt nodded and said, a certain person came back here from the colorful world. Someone once saw her sword light like a rainbow, traveling across the sea. Looking at her direction, she is going to Fuyuzhou. Although he only said, someone, the Taoist knew it well. The Taoist seemed to have realized something, and turned to look at her. She nodded. That Ning Yao probably broke through again and again. Even if his Taoist heart is as firm as a burly Taoist priest, when he heard about this, he would inevitably look in a trance for a moment, and said softly, "It's terrible." She nodded and said, "It's unreasonable to break the realm like this. It's only been a few years since she left the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Yuanying broke through the realm to Yupu, beheaded ancient gods, immortals, and defeated Daozu in a battle of swords. The closed-door disciple has no power to fight back, soars up, and now..." With a heavy sigh, she said helplessly, "I really can't go on, people are more angry than others, and it just makes others feel disheartened." She then smiled and said, "I have become the #1 person in the world, and across the world, I still come and leave whenever I want. It's really free." The burly Taoist stood up suddenly, and this time, he became taller and taller. He was actually a head taller than the man in the north of Aquarius Island. The uninvited guest, still invisible, just smiled and did not hide his sarcasm. The two seniors have such a high realm, and their identities are still very unusual, so they like to talk about my family affairs so much. The woman in the green skirt followed senior brother Liu's line of sight and looked at one place. After ripples, the visitor finally appeared. The man was dressed in green and had a sword on his back. He had a slender figure, and his white hair on the sideburns had turned green again, probably because of entering the fairyland. But his expression was sluggish, probably it was the fight with Ma Kuxuan, and it was not easy to win. She couldn't help but asked curiously, "When did Qin Shanju come here?" Chen Ping asked with a smile, "I'm also curious, when did the two seniors come to Aquarius Island?" The woman in the green skirt frowned and said nothing. "Come here to ask questions. This person's current real state. The price for him and Lu Qin to temporarily borrow the realm is to fall back from Yupu to nascent soul." The Taoist explained her confusion with his heartfelt voice. Before Taoist Wu Di left the Taoist temple, he patted Zhong Shan on the shoulder, and he noticed the unusualness of Zhong Shan's roots. It seems that he didn't intend to, but he had intentions. As for when he sneaked into this place, I don't know either. The woman in the green skirt became more and more puzzled. "You are a fairy, you don't even know. Their business is either killing or being killed. They are most proficient in lurking and sneak attack. How could Qin Pingon notice this place?" The Taoist said, "It may be your arrival that leaked your whereabouts." The woman in the green skirt laughed angrily. The burly Taoist said, "My name is Lu Taoji, and I am the helmsman of the Shishan Jianin lineage. In Tonggishao, Mr. Qin has already met Qin Bai. She is the former leader of the Cherry Tsingyi lineage. After she resigned, her position has been vacant for a long time. This Liangting is Qin Bai's junior sister named Xiao Pu. We don't even have a Taoist name in our sect, even if we don't belong to the same line, we are mostly called according to seniority. Xiao Pu's appearance is just that of a man, his skin is yellowish, but he has an awe-inspiring and inviolable austere demeanor. She put a wooden hairpin on her head, wore cotton clothes, stepped on a pair of cloth shoes, and said with a smile, "If you imitate the flying ducks, you will be ashamed of the swordsman." Chen Pingon was indifferent. Although the boys and girls in the gazebo couldn't hear the words of the three of them, they were all very curious about the identity and origin of the blue-clothed swordsman. Feng Qing, a young man with a horizontal sword on his knee, looked on coldly at the uninvited guest. The young girl was Jingding, but she couldn't take her eyes off it, as if she had seen some exaggerated scene. Her face was full of amazement and novelty. Chen Pingon looked at Lu Taoji, smiled and said, "Not seeking fame or gain, tossing and turning in the world of mortals, looking for people to save, helping those in need, doing justice for the heavens, is indeed respectable." Lu Taoji smiled and said, "There is a long way to go." But Xiao Pu felt that there was something in that Chen Pingan's words. Didn't they seem like good words? In this matter, the young hermit official is well known. Chen Pingan asked, "It is said that Shishan Jianyan's lineage was sent out of the country by my senior brother. Irony. If I didn't really approve of your actions, would I be willing to chat with you so much here?" Lu Taoji made no secret of this matter, and revealed his short story. "I had a discussion with Cui Chan on the matter of governing the country, but it was a pity that we did not agree with each other. In the end, Cui Chan still thought about my old acquaintance with someone. It's why he didn't kill us Shishan Jianin. Facts have proved that Cui Chan is right." Chen Ping hesitated for a moment but still didn't say anything. There are not many people who can be regarded as friends by Senior Cui. Lu Taoji said, "I once met a scholar surnamed Cui in Shenzhou of Zhongtu. For some reason, he was sometimes sober and sometimes confused. But we are conversant in words and have similar personalities. We walked a long distance together and traveled together for many years. In the moonlight, there was a lot of drinking on the road. We didn't ask each other's identity, let alone explore it curiously. Before we parted, we still only knew the surname." Speaking of this, Lu Taoji showed a little sadness. "I was just wondering about it back then. As a scholar, Mr. Cui has great knowledge, but his boxing skills are even higher. Back then, when the snow covered the sky and the earth, we traveled alone with a sword, we met by chance, we hit it off right away, and we went to the same restaurant if we wanted to ask about our thoughts." Chen Pingan corrected, "Senior Cus boxing skills are extremely high, but he has never been very knowledgeable." Lu Taoji nodded, bringing this matter up to Mr. Chin. "I absolutely don't mean to understand that reasoning won't work, so we have to move it emotionally." Chen Ping smiled and said, "Senior is worrying too much." Lu Taoji then continued, "Although junior sister Qin failed to persuade Mr. Chin, I still refuse to give up. To be honest, even if Mr. Chin doesn't come today, I will take a trip to Luopa Mountain soon." Chen Pingan shook his head and said, "Senior is kind enough to understand, and being an official will be exempted." Lu Taoji hesitated to speak. Chen Pingan said, "If it's just to bring up old things and chat about the past, I would like to personally invite my seniors here to have a drink at Luoba Mountain Bamboo House." Lu Taoji shook his head instead. "Is there really no room for negotiation?" Sword of Coming Chapter 1100. A person who has attained the Tao, a sword fairy, seems to be able to kill the world with a single word. Xiao Pu remained silent. She was instantly sure that the previous desperate fight in the Ma Mansion was definitely not Yu Pu versus Yu Pu as they estimated, with additional martial arts versus supernatural powers. It's immortal to immortal. As for the price of Chen Pingan and by Yu Jingla's borrowing of realms and Taoism, Xiao Pu and senior brother Lu had made their own estimates. Even if Chen Pingan was a martial artist at the limit, she still felt that she would definitely fall to the cave realm in one breath. Brother Lu said that Chen Pingan's martial arts physique is unusual. In Tonggishao, he is the strongest and has martial arts. Stop at Jindan. Lu Taoji had no choice but to help smooth things over, explaining, "The people who were expelled by Cui Chan back then were just our Shishan Jianin lineage, and had nothing to do with Qin Bai and Xiao Pu's lineage. Their origin and Aquarius continent go, not bound by the rules of Dali. If it wasn't for Shishan Jianin and Cherry Tsinjiai, who need to follow the orders of the main hall, and someone has to take turns to protect Master Qing, Lu will not set foot on Aquarius continent again." Chen Ping corrected with a smile, "It's just a gift to leave the country, not to mention expulsion. Brother Cui is very polite to Shishan Jianyan's lineage. Xiao Pu has a straightforward personality, and she can't listen to this kind of yin and yang." She almost wanted to add fuel to the flames. How can the Great Li dynasty, which is only half a continent, manage the affairs of the south? Lu Taoji first reminded Xiao Pu from his heart to keep his heart and not to be mistaken, and then he continued to explain. Xiao Pu retreated from Yuanying to break through the realm, and the process was extremely dangerous. Her demons manifested. A man surnamed Qin. Later in an assassination, Xiao Pu was cut to pieces by a certain sword fairy. In the boundary of Naku City, she still could not escape this sword robbery, so she became a ghost. So today I met Qin Jianxian. She was a little out of sorts. The demon in his heart was a man surnamed Qin, but the one who killed his real body was a sword fairy surnamed Qin, and now he had to deal with a man surnamed Qin, which was really uncomfortable. When Lu Taoji mentioned the sad past, the woman in the green skirt snorted coldly. Past events are old events, but to Xiao Pu, who is stubborn, each event is like the present event. Xiao Pu's expression was gloomy immediately, and he spoke harshly in the market, always saying that she would not take this revenge and swear that she would not be a human being, but she was a ghost, but she still couldn't take revenge. It's not bad if we say we don't share the sky. She is a ghost, and the enemy who is still a living person has a different path, it is still true. Lu Taoji said, the position of the leader of Xiao Pu's lineage has been vacant for a long time. For hundreds of years, Xiao Pu has been busy and traveled all over the 3 continents. Especially during the Great War, she took the initiative to go to Tonggishao. It is to accumulate external skills so as to fill in the vacant position. After Qin Bai resigned from Qin Bai's lineage, there has never been a person who is both virtuous and high-level. As a rule, the person with the highest merit will be the leader, the person with the highest realm will be the leader, and the person with the most power will be the preacher, responsible for finding the seeds of the immortal seedlings. Chen Pingan nodded. If it is said that justice is at ease in people's hearts, one cannot ignore the merits one deserves. He looked at Xiao Pu again. Since this woman in the green skirt is one of the 3 candidates for the leader of the Cherry Tsingyi lineage, how high are the other 2 candidates? Xiao Pu glanced at him. Seeing through his carefully arranged mountain and water restrictions to deceive the eye, and recognizing his true appearance. Don't be like that certain young child prodigy who has been coveting Gong Sun Lingling for a long time, don't like a slender young woman, but prefer an older plump woman. Is it any wonder that Sui Jingqing, who was so beautiful in the city, was looked down upon back then? Is it the number of roads? Chen Ping smiled. First there is the excessive drinking of Gao Zhu, and then the wrong way of the woman in the green skirt. Your eyes are all on your buttocks. Yuemo felt that the atmosphere was too dignified, and there was no need to make the relationship so tense. Lu Taoji said with a smile, since we have not negotiated a deal with Qin Guosher, the Yuan Chaoxian of Huzhou has also come to Chongyang Temple, and after that, the affairs of the teacher will be all over. Leave it to Xiao Pu to deal with, and there is nothing wrong with the main hole. I am happy to relax, unload the burden, and go to other continents to try my luck. To be honest, Chen Guosher and Dolly Song help Luopashan to select fairy seedlings and practice martial arts. Wizards may not be stronger than us. After all, the Dolly court can only find good materials and beautiful jade in Aquarius continent and Tongya continent, but we can work silently for 20 years in Hauran 8 continents for a chief minister. Luopa Mountain is closed and opened again. The number of monks in the upper lineage is probably much more than the number of monks in the lower lineage. Chen Ping waved his hands and said with a smile, busy is good for being busy, and lazy is for being lazy. Senior Lu doesn't need to persuade you anymore. Reach out and don't hit the smiling person. It's not surprising that many people are polite. Chen Pingan thought for a moment, and said, Shishan Jianyan's lineage, from now on, whether it is here to protect the way for the elders of the master secretly, or go to a certain place outside the Dalizhou prefecture. There is no problem for people from the land to return to the mountain and lighten the lintel of the gate. But the ugly words are up front, and I will report this matter to the Dali court for record. Lu Taoji, Xiao Pu, and Junqing are all high scholars. I regard you as gentlemen with a bright moon and a clear breeze. Don't take me and the dolly court as fools. Lu Taoji knew the elegant meaning when he heard the strings, nodded immediately and said, if we have a conflict with Dolly Punishment Department Nyen Gonlang because of a certain genius of cultivation, the members of Shishan Jianyan's lineage will take the initiative to give in and choose another place to choose disciples. Probably this is reciprocity, reciprocating. Sensing Chen Pingan's gaze wandering over him again, Xiaopu had no choice but to follow up, I haven't become the leader of Cherry Tsing Yi, so I don't dare to say anything, but I will send a letter to the General Hall to make some suggestions. When I met Dallas Xingbafu and Nianganlang who were going out, I just voluntarily backed down. It's just that whether this matter will be successful or not, still needs to be decided by the main hall, and I don't care what I say. Chen Pingan nodded and smiled. The starting point of a business is not money, but integrity. It's just that Xiaopu couldn't help feeling anxious, more than once or twice. This person didn't look at her face, he wanted to look at her figure. When a man looks at a woman, he doesn't look at the face but at the chest, and he doesn't pay attention to the eyebrows and eyes but the waist and hips. Is it really the same taste as that thief? What Chen Ping was really interested in, of course, was not what Xiaopu misunderstood. It was the magic robe on the woman and the green skirt that cast multiple spells and restrictions, which seemed to be a mountain treasure that started as a half-immortal soldier and might even reach the rank of an immortal soldier. Moreover, the more Chen Ping looked at it, the more familiar it became. It turned out that Qing Qian, who was a childish-looking real person in Hehuan Mountain, had a cassock on his body, which was magnificent. A certain abandoned disciple of the heavenly King Chao Rong is himself a book of Taoism without words. It can help Qing Qian get through the nether pass, ignore the restriction of yin and yang to a certain extent, pass through the gate of ghosts, and walk on the road to Huangquan with the posture of a living person in the yang world, but how far he can go in the underworld probably depends on the monk's merits. Tao power is strong or weak. So after thinking about it, Chen Pingan was most worried about taking a sneaky detour, such as a great monk passing a dark road to assassinate himself. That's why Chen Pingan cared so much about the magic robe on the woman and the green skirt, so be careful. Naturally, Xiaopu couldn't argue with anything, and when she wanted to speak a few times, she swallowed it back. Lu Taoji was also helpless. How should he explain this to Chen Pingan? And how to explain it to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple? That assassin, no matter how he possessed Xiaopu, his realm is so high and his methods are so secret, it's unimaginable. A bottom press technique of a monk at the top of the Ascension realm. No, it's only half a step away from perfection. Was it a 14th realm candidate deliberately targeting Chen Pingan in a deliberate sneak attack? In the battle between Chen Pingan and Ma Kushuan, he was indeed seriously injured. After being hit like this, it made the situation worse and the injury was even worse. Chen Pingan coughed a few times, clenched his fists against his mouth, rested for a while, retracted his hands and sleeves, and said with a smile, "It's okay." He added another sentence to ease the atmosphere, "Senior Lu still doesn't need to think about it." Lu Taoji smiled wryly, "Can this be considered all right?" Even Xiaopu wanted to give this person a thumbs up when he heard the words, "The man is so open-minded, the hidden official is indeed a hero." Chen Pingan thought for a while and explained, "Lu Taoji, Xiaopu, you really don't have to feel guilty. I have to thank Xiaopu for protecting a friend from disaster. Otherwise, it will be replaced by Xu Jianhu Zenji, the female ghost Shui Rui in the capital." Chen Pingan had already roughly figured out the main line, looked at the woman in the green skirt, and said with a smile, "But Xiaopu really has to thank me once, for being able to avoid a calamity of swords and soldiers, and there is no hidden danger for a flawed Tao heart, just right offset, we don't have to say thank you hypocritically. A person who cultivates the Tao, relying on external objects, acting on his will, crossing the boundary between yin and yang, and going to the realm of the underworld to find clues to the enemy, should not do it again and again. Walk by the river often without getting your shoes wet. If you walk too much at night, it's not good. You have to take revenge. It doesn't mean giving someone's head to the enemy for free. If I'm not mistaken, the Cho family surnamed Shin you're looking for either attached himself to this ghost early in the underworld, or was eaten up and wiped out by it. Maybe the ghosts in the Yang world are the fairies of mountains and rivers for them to fly across. The name Chen Pingan is like the green curtain wine flag of a restaurant in Xianjia Ferry. Xiao Pu listened patiently to a young man's teachings, and never bothered him. Sort of Coming Chapter 1101. Back at the house, before Chen Pingan entered, he heard Lu Xianyang's loud voice, talking about how he was on Jinwu Mountain, how he was like of swordsmanship, and what a hero he was. Gu Ken was too lazy to expose Lu Xianyang's braggadocio and didn't write a draft. This guy went to the Jinwu Mountain Patriarch Hall to block the door, but there was no conflict. The two male and female patriarchs of Jinwu Mountain rushed to the door together, and they were very respectful to the suzerain of the Longquan sword sect. Lu Xianyang visited several forbidden halls that are usually not open to the public. When Gu Ken got there, the leisurely Lu Jianxian was drinking tea. But I don't deny that Lu Xianyang, who is serious, looks like a dog. He said that the sword is not a sword fairy, and the suzerain is full of style. Going to Jinwu Mountain, Lu Xianyang went directly to the Patriarch Hall with his sword, but when he left, he took Gu Ken down the mountain on foot. Facing the old Patriarch of Jinwu Mountain who personally sent them to the mountain gate, Lu Xianyang smiled and asked if he wanted to make up for the ceremony himself. The implication is that he can go through the mountain gate first, then take a trip to the Shinto, and finally walk down the mountain again. The old patriarch who is responsible for adding lamp oil to the Patriarch Hall year after year said with a smile that Lu Jianxian need not be so polite. Before Ma Kushuan went down the mountain, he had already left the genealogy on his own, leaving some extremely rare and precious treasures behind. Not only that, but Ma Kushuan also cancelled Yu Shiwa's name and Daoist name on the Golden Jade genealogy of Jinwu Mountain's closely guarded Patriarch Hall. Seeing Chen Pingan walking slowly into the hospital, Gu Ken seemed to be more depressed, and asked in her heart, "What's going on?" Chen Pingan said, "It's nothing, it can't be explained clearly in a few sentences, I don't have the energy to speak for the time being, and I will review the game with you when I have a chance." Lu Xianyang didn't know if he was forgiving, or he didn't see anything, so he waved to Chen Pingan, "Come in for a drink." Chen Pingan said, "I can't drink, I share, if you want to drink more, you can do it for me." Lu Xianyang laughed and said, "Whether it's beautiful to drink in my hometown, or to be close to people in my hometown. I almost forgot, this is not a small town." When Chen Pingan sat down on the bench, Gu Ken looked outside the house and asked for no reason, "Can you understand it this way, rain is actually money?" Lu Xianyang said carelessly, "Spring rain is as expensive as oil, and rain comes after a long drought. The old saying makes sense. It's not about money." Gu Ken was non-committal. Gu Lingyu was more curious about the young hermit's answer. "I never thought that Chen Pingan just echoed, it can be understood in this way." And Lu Jibao's road to unity can be divided into two veins, one of which is relatively simple, which is to spend money. successfully merged into the 14th realm. It is no longer impossible to win back the word north for Iazhao from Beiju Luzhou. In Qingming Tianxia, the co-suzerain of Liangjing Mountain and Dachao sect, and the Taoist companion of Chaoga, Su Jun has repeatedly read the Su Wugui taught by Bai Yu Jinglu these days. When Su Wan turned his head and looked out the window, it was already dawn. When he put down the book, Su Wan was in the 14th realm somehow. So the first 14-level ghost appeared in the world. Su Jun couldn't laugh or cry at this. In the Western Buddhist kingdom, Peng Yuanji, a sword repairman from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, has been following a disheveled monk who seems to have never been shaved, and together he has sculpted 500 statues of arhats for the temple. In addition, monks will also sit cross-legged in the corridor outside the hall, with a focused expression, and carve a Buddha statue of unknown material. For some reason, the monks cast statues inside the temple during the day and carved statues outside the temple at night. Peng Yuanji also asked the abbot of the temple, how many years has this monk who never spoke a word persisted? The old abbot only said many, many years. Peng Yuanji asked again, is he practicing closed mantra? The old abbot said that if it wasn't for the support of the temple's great array, every tiny thought of that person would be thunder rolling from the sky. Peng Yuanji asked again, he has been carving Buddha statues outside the temple for so long, why has he not opened his face for the Buddha statues? The old abbot said that he was still looking for his true colors, and the Buddha statue he carved was himself. Peng Yuanji couldn't help asking, is it so difficult to become a Buddha? The old abbot said that he was afraid that it would be even more difficult. Peng Yuanji finally asked a question, what hair do monks have? The old abbot said that it was his obsession that he couldn't let go of, and the more he cut, the longer he cut. It has been raining heavily for several consecutive days, and the sky and the earth are as dark as night at noon, and it will not stop for a few more days. Today Peng Yuanji sat near the monk, and usually carved statues outside the hall at night. Did the monk break the precepts in his heart? It's not that Peng Yuanji didn't think about copying the words from the book, and wanted to make mistakes, hoping to help the monk a little bit. For example, why bother to light lamps during the day? Why bother to light candles during the day? After hearing such words, the monk would stop the carving knife in his hand, raise his head, and thank Peng Yuanji with a smile.